All right. Ready to go? Okay, I guess we're gonna start this planning board meeting. I guess we probably all ought to join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the first course of order. Say the first course of order is to have a motion to bring Danny on board.
I'll make a motion if we full voting status.
Do I have a second?
Yes.
All those in favor? All those opposed?
Well,
Okay, we have no minutes tonight, at least according to this.
Nope.
Okay. We're gonna start up with the tabled public hearing for 2 Piper Mill Road. There were some questions about a few things on there. What have I got my notes?
Should we have the applicants present the
Traffic study or?
well, the photos, we asked about.
Yep.
The
We did.
scenic impact.
Did you guys, do you have any blown up copies of that, or what we have is just what?
Or
sent
did
in?
you put it on, anything we can put on the screen? To show people, remember, we were interested in seeing the visual impact of the project from the road.
Good evening, I'm Rebecca Dillon from Bond Architects. We did submit for visuals in the package, but we also have boards, so it's.
Yeah, you would like to see the boards.
We still have that easel in there. Be right in there behind the door.
Yeah, we want people to be able to see these, not necessarily us.
Where would be the best location?
Wait just a second. You're gonna, that easel's not in there anymore? Not in that closet there with Larry, is it?
Thank you.
Ah, there's
There
2
we
of them.
go, right there. Got one.
I knew there was one somewhere.
Where would you?
Why don't you put them like, put them right over here, right in the front, kind of tip them like this so everybody can see them.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's good.
You can see these, okay?
I can't see that one very well, but I think I can. Yeah. That bottom one's going to be the next right there, I think.
Just for the knowledge of members of the public, these were also included in the meeting packet that was posted to the town's website, if that's an easier way for you to access it. Okay, so is this working?
That working, Larry?
Doesn't feel very loud.
is that mic working on the gas table?
Okay. All right.
So what we did, we know that there were definitely questions in regards to the visual impacts from School Street. So on the lower left board, we took a site plan here and superimposed our project over the existing landscape. So you can see where all of the existing trees are, the existing roads, existing homes along School Street. And what we tried to do, it was really difficult to show what existing trees were going to stay. So that's what you're seeing in white. The lighter color are the existing trees that will be remaining. So we wanted you to be able to see that graphically. And so, for example, you know, there's existing trees here, there's existing vegetation all around here, but that's most likely going to go away just for construction purposes and grading the site. So now you'll see that, you know, this tree line is actually moving down here in that area. So what we ended up doing is taking 3 views from School Street. You can see that there's this natural opening along School Street with where you can really see up to the site there. So we took 3 views. We took a view here. It's called A, a view here is B, and a view here is C. And so the board in the upper right is showing you what you're going to see from those 3 views. So view A here this is a residential home. I believe it's 86 School Street. And this is the existing photo. And then we superimposed our building in there so that you could see what you're going to be able to see from School Street through that property. So there's the house on the right, and then they have a garage on the left. And so you're going to see a small portion of the building there. It's one of the residential neighborhoods where I don't know if you recall in this rendering here, we have the main entrance, and then we have a neighborhood here. That's the neighborhood that you're seeing in that view. So then we go down School Street and we have view B, which is looking from the left side of 96 School Street, which is, I think they're an electrician. It's an existing business use. And you can see this is what it looks like now. And then you come over here and past that, looking through that property, you will see again that same wing neighborhood of the building. And then view C down here, which is actually to the right side of 96 School Street. Again, it's that electrical business. Looking through their driveway up, you can see the existing grade climbs up to where our building will be. And you see that through here. And again, you see that one wing of the building. And we didn't take any views further down School Street because of the existing vegetation. You're not going to see the building. So what we did do is this rendering taken from a bird's eye perspective from the intersection of Piper Mill and School Street that really gives you a good idea of the existing vegetation, where the building is in relation to that and in relation to these buildings down here. And again, you can see that natural opening in the landscape here, where there will be views along School Street up to that left wing of the building. I don't know if you'd prefer to ask questions while I'm here, if you want us to
It's a
talk
public
about more.
hearing, right? Should we have the public ask questions?
Do you have any questions to take on?
Well, I have to say that it seems that these drawings are a little misleading
Mhm.
because actually when you sit in front of these houses and you look over toward that hill, the development really starts with that big tree. You know, there's a big tree, like a sentinel tree. And that's gonna be taken out, I'm sure, right?
Sorry. So the one that's in the middle of the lawn area, the meadow area,
Yeah,
is coming out.
Yeah,
yes.
right.
But
And we've taken it out.
But those are really short
and that's
trees.
taken out actually on these renderings. So we've been very careful to take
Okay.
out any of the things from these renderings that are going to be taken out as part of the construction process.
Oh, I see.
And these are taken off photographs, which is really the only way you can do this, is to get a photograph from School Street and then superimpose on what the building looks like behind it. So we've been very careful not to overestimate what trees are remaining. It's taken off the tree line, they're shown on the site plan. So the trees that are remaining are the trees that are outside the limits of clearing associated with the project. So, and they are, as you can see, they're photographs that are taken from School Street with a realistic views of what that move looks like. And that's the only way you can really do this, is take a photo, do a three-dimensional model. There's quite a lot of work goes into it, the topography goes into it, trees go into it. You'll notice, I know you mentioned the little trees in the valley there. We clip those down to like 6 to 8 feet high, which is, you know, based on our experience, you're looking at the site, they're pretty low down by the stream. So you see they're out of the view shed of the building, but they're down low. This is all a faithful
Okay.
three-dimensional
I see.
representation.
And I think the tree that you're talking about is this one right here.
Right,
And you can see in this view, it's gone,
right. See, I was a little confused on that.
Yeah. which in plan, it's down, it's actually in this area.
Mhm.
Is there an opportunity for public questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, from the perspective.
Please come up.
Jennifer Fox, 56 High Street, and I'm on the corner of High Street and School Street. So I would be the residence where you said you didn't take a perspective of what you might view from School Street. I'm right on the corner there. So I just had a question when you said on your graphic down here, you're showing current vegetation, but a lot of that vegetation would be moved for construction and grading. And you were also saying over on your other bottom graphic that that's the vegetation that's going to screen School Street. So could you clarify what of that vegetation would be remaining after construction and grading?
Should she go through all of her questions and then we answer them, or how?
I do have another question about scenic impact. And how this is a big project, and there are lots of things that I feel like we need to look at as far as a community comprehensive plan, and in regards to the scenic impact. Something that we didn't address at the last meeting is when you actually drive into Damascotta and the look of the village when you're coming from Newcastle. This very large project is going to be up on the ridge and probably seen from that approach to Damascotta. So that's just sort of more of a philosophical question. How do we want the village and development in Damascotta to look? That's not really a question, more of a comment. Thank you.
Why don't you stay right there and she can answer some of your questions.
All right, thank you.
You may have more questions for her during that.
Thank you.
So what we did here on this site plan is I don't know if you can see the white. How we've got a bunch of the trees here that are white. Those are existing trees that are remaining. So, there's trees here that I was referring to that will most likely go away because just for construction and getting and grading the site. And there's some trees here that will have to be removed. And then, of course, any vegetation that's on the actual site where the building and parking lot is going to be.
And then as far as a view shed coming into Damascotta, I don't know where we are in the process, how much more we can ask for. And is that anything anybody would ever want to consider when you're?
I'm not sure that that's visible from there.
Like I said, it's gonna be interesting to see,
First
you
of
know,
all,
but I don't think you could see that.
I don't
from
think
there.
you're gonna be able to see it coming into Damascotta. I do not see that.
You're talking coming down the ramp by Lincoln Home to look over across the way there.
Right, and you get the classic view of Damascotta, the steeple, and behind that, I believe, is the ridge that this property will be impacting, but I'm not sure.
Well, there's Rockies in front of it, which is a high pined cliff structure. Then it rises up from Rocky to a field, drops down and then comes up again. I'm not convinced that that's actually going to be visible. I don't know that. I'm not sure there's anything in any ordinance that would stop them from building this building because of that. So,
I'm not looking for stopping, I'm looking for planning, and everything points to the comp plan and trying to embrace what the community has thought about and would like to see going forward.
yeah.
But
I
I
hear you.
appreciate your consideration.
And I'm not sure what visibility there is from High Street up into there either. There's quite a lot of, there's a lot of trees and stuff in there. Although I've never stood there and really looked up in there to see if I could see in there.
But
You mind if I ask a couple of questions?
Yeah, come on up, sit down.
I'm Tom Houseman, 56 High Street. We live together. So on this, I think one of the things that when you look at these pictures, they're really focused. When you actually are standing in front of this, you are taking in a whole lot more than these pictures allow you to see. So I think that, if you look at these, this does not give you the actual perspective. If you were to go to Google Maps, you would probably scroll to the left and right to actually be able to see what the human eye is able to perceive. I think one of the things that's probably good for people to do, if you go up to Rockland and look at the project that Clippership is building up there, it's very similar to this project. And if you go up and you look at that project, I believe the developer invited anyone to go up and take a look around. If you go up and take a look around, you can see how massive this project's going to be. This is going to be 1.5 times bigger than the size of the Hannaford in Damascotta. 75,000 square feet. It's a really big building, and it's going to be visible from a long ways away. And I think when you look at if you look at the project here, the stand of oaks that are on the western side of the property. So this one down here in the lower left, if you look at this, the oak trees that are there do a really good job of screening the property from School Street and High Street. The more of those oaks that come down, the more you're going to be able to see. And I think this property where it's sitting up on the hill and the different, what's the language you guys use to refer to the different
Neighborhoods.
neighborhoods? So the different neighborhoods, you're going to be able to see a lot of these neighborhoods when you drive down School Street. So I really want to have people consider the size of this project. This is a really big project.
Mhm.
75,000 square feet is enormous. So
It is big.
that's it.
I agree.
That's it for me right now.
Anybody else from the public want to speak?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things. I've
Okay.
got something. First of all, my name's Jeff Kachakian. I live at 86 School Street. I can actually show you all a photograph that actually depicts the view of that hillside.
You can get a little closer.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is actually the view from the top of the ridge right on School Street there.
Mhm.
So that's the,
Well,
you know it. You know it well.
I'm his neighbor across the street. That's why we're.
So I have one thing, I've written something I want to read, and then I think it says pretty much, how I, how I feel about the project. I know that the planning board's responsibility is to look at the criteria, figure out how it fits and, how it meets the town criteria, but, the letter of the code, but I'm concerned that there's a spirit here that's not being considered. I don't believe that a project like this was ever intended to be put in this neighborhood. It's, as my neighbor next, who spoke last said, it's a huge project. It is probably the biggest building in town, if not one of the biggest.
It's one of them.
It dwarfs all of the other current uses in our neighborhood. It's completely out of scale. It has the potential to create significant traffic, light and noise problems for each abutter, nearby landowner and resident, as well as for folks going up and down the Pemmican Peninsula who travel through our neighborhood. School Street already has a traffic problem, if anyone who lives there knows. That's going to be addressed in some way, shape or form in some of the upcoming projects, but none of those projects have taken this proposal into account. The Lincoln County Rifle Club has already expressed a significant concern of theirs that they may become an unfriendly neighbor to this project because of their proximity. I mean, it's not super loud where we live, but it's a lot closer to the Rifle Club than where we are in School Street. And I am convinced, I don't know, haven't seen the traffic study results, but I'm convinced that the High Street residents are going to see a huge increase in traffic on that narrow road. For a project of this magnitude, something that's just, I mean, it's one of the biggest projects in town that has been, I think has been proposed. I would have expected a different process instead of having a fully formed project sort of dropped on the table saying, here's what we want to do. I would have loved to have had, you know, these folks who are proposing this come to the town and say, we have a great business opportunity. We'd really like to work with you to put this in town in a way that would benefit the town. You know, there are pluses and minuses. There are you know, benefits as well as drawbacks that should be weighed and measured before a site gets chosen to create and a design built. There've got to be other potential locations for a project of this scale, not sited almost directly next to the Rifle Club, pushed into a corner of a lot filled with wetlands, so much so that variances are requested. There's a 10-acre piece that's being held back, yet they're asking for variances because it doesn't fit in the plan that they proposed. And that doesn't make sense to me. I'm frustrated that there are variances being asked for in a situation where they've got 10 more acres behind them that they've chosen not to use. So it's frustrating to me. And I'm sure you can tell, but I just don't see this as fitting the spirit of our neighborhood. It's out of scale. So that's the statement I wanted to make. There are lots of questions I had from last meeting, but really what I formed is this instead. I think that this really gets more to the heart of what I wanted to say about the project. Do you have questions for me? I mean, I live there. I can give you lots of information about the site.
Well,
So-
I've hunted out in there all my life. That was my grandmother and grandfather's property.
Yeah.
I'm quite familiar with it.
Now, we look at it every day, and it will be a significant change to our neighborhood. So, thanks.
Could I briefly just respond to the variances comment?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we're using, I think I understood sort of what you were attempting to say, but I want to make, yeah, I just want to make sure we're using the correct terminology because variances have sort of a different connotation in land use planning. They are sort of governed by state statute and are subject to 4 very specific criteria. They are very infrequently granted, whereas waivers to site plan review criteria or local ordinance criteria are more frequently granted.
Waivers are what I.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
And I have a question. Isabel, has the applicant given us a plan without the waivers in it? Because we do have a part of our policy of that. Can they build it without the waivers?
So
And did I miss that?
So there are 3 waivers that are noted in my staff review memo. Sorry.
I don't know what I did with them.
They are related to sidewalks within the parking areas and then the other,
Was the
Uh,
boundary?
yep, and then the 30-foot minimum buffer strip, which they provided clarification on at the last meeting, if I remember correctly. And then the other one isn't specific to the submitted site plan. It's actually a waiver of ordinance requirements for submittals. So it's slightly different.
So in year 1 for the boundary.
Yep.
your recommendation was that it's pretty much a non-issue because they own the property.
Correct. It would be my understanding that the intent of this piece of the ordinance was to protect abutting properties of a differing use. Whereas in this case, they are they are retaining the adjacent parcel for future development of a compatible land use.
Then what happens if that property sells and they're no longer the owner?
Right.
Then it's an issue.
Yes.
I think that would be something for you all to consider. Yeah.
Mhm.
I have a question about waivers. If I may.
Yes.
Is the parking lot, the request to have a larger parking lot than is required by ordinance, is that a waiver?
That's a really good question. So in some communities, they have maximum parking requirements, like you can't go over this amount. Our requirements are only minimum parking requirements. So while it's always the sort of intention to request the applicants, minimize impervious surfaces by providing only the minimum or slightly above the minimum, it's not a waiver of our ordinance because we don't have parking maximums.
Don't we have isn't there a state ordinance or as part of our ordinances, a requirement that you can't cover 95% of a parcel with impervious surface? I mean, this parcel is so covered. It's completely developed.
So we have like lot coverage requirements in our ordinance for buildings and then in terms of like impervious area, I believe that would be governed under their SLOTA permit, which is currently being reviewed by the DEP. And there are, stormwater considerations that you take into account
Site
there.
location of development.
Yes, sorry.
Okay. But don't they say that you can't develop more than
I'm not
a
aware.
certain percentage of a,
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything.
what is that? Okay,
No, they don't.
they don't?
No, I'm not aware of
The
it.
state has a requirement under SLOTA there is a threshold under SLOTA which triggers the requirement for a SLOTA permit, which is 3 acres or more of structure. They don't govern lot coverage. Lot coverage is usually a local zoning requirement.
Yeah.
So there are, for example, and they couldn't, because for example, if you were in the city of Portland, you
Mhm.
might have 100% lot coverage. It might be allowed under the local zoning ordinance, and the state would not come in and say you can't do that. I just one other clarification on the waivers. You're correct. We're only asking for 3 waivers. There are no waivers being asked for between this property and the adjacent neighboring properties. So it's simply the sidewalk width, which we do show on the site plan. We show them as 8 feet wide. We don't want them to be 8 feet wide because there's no need for them to be that wide. 6 feet is more than enough. And then the boundary is just a buffer between the division of the property, the internal division of the property, which in effect is between 2 parcels that are owned by the same owner right now. If that parcel were sold to somebody else, that would be an existing condition. So whoever bought that parcel would know that that condition existed. I think the ordinance requirement is for the case as this is, where you're putting a big building that is a different use next to an existing residential structure, you are required to put a buffer in on that. So you're protecting the existing use.
That's Andy, John.
What is the lot coverage on that? Do you know what the lot coverage is of impervious surface?
Well, that's an interesting question. We looked through your ordinance, and although lot coverage is mentioned, you don't have a lot coverage requirement in this zone. So we haven't done the calculation. We could do it,
Oh,
absolutely, but we haven't. We don't. And of course, we've done the calculations.
I
for
figured
storm
with all you've done, I figured you may have already done that.
Yeah.
Why
that we have.
All right. Have any other questions? Go ahead, come on up.
Andrea Kushkarian, Water Street. So one of my concerns about this sitting on top of the hill is the light pollution that we're going to get, that we're going to see from all over the town. And how is this going to be received by everyone?
I got that down there.
I would like to see what it's really going to look like and how much it's going to spread. And what is the lumen output going to be and how it's going to affect the surrounding.
The lighting plan was included in the previous application materials submitted in the November 7th packet.
Although they say in the lighting plan, it mentioned that the lights would be reduced to a minimum amount for security purposes, you know, at certain times. But that's really left to the developer or to, you know, to the people that operate the plant, not, that's a pretty wishy-washy.
Maybe we'll let the applicant answer that.
Yeah.
Absolutely, please.
Well, that's another one which we address in accordance with the ordinance. So the ordinance doesn't actually specify that lights have to be switched off at certain times. It requires us to do a photometric plan that shows what the lighting levels are under the full lights on condition, and that we have no light trespass off the property. So what we've done is we've designed them with all with full cut off LED fixtures, which are all obviously face down and face directly onto the property. We've looked at the color temperature of the lighting, so it's a softer orange, more orange, less blue, white color. That again meets the ordinance. And then as we go through the process and as we start to design the switching off and switching on of lights, we just have to be careful to make sure there's enough coverage when the lights go into that security mode that people are not feeling unsafe when they get to and from their vehicles or tripping on curves. So that's something that we will certainly look at as we move forward. But the intent is, you know, for us to permit this with a lighting plan that meets the ordinance when all the lights are on. So there's no trespass off the property when the lights are on.
Do you know how tall the lighting fixtures are off the top of your head?
16 feet, that's all the way.
16?
16
I think
feet.
16.
Our ordinance actually requires 16, and this is how I remember it, is because I flagged it.
Maximum of 6.
A maximum of 16 feet in height.
They can't be
So what
higher.
about all the light going up?
There is no light going up. So these are all full cut off lighting fixtures. Now they're all directed down. Easier with the LED because they're individual lighting fixtures, multiple lighting fixtures, and we can direct them a little better. They all have full cut off heads on, so there'll be no upward directed light coming from any of these fixtures.
If you go to the Camden National Bank parking lot at night, they have their lighting is compliant with our most recent regulations. And it's surprising how the light just stops at the edge of the parking lot. I mean, you can be really specific with these new lighting fixtures. I was really worried as well. But I went to look at the Camden Bank parking lot because I knew that it was compliant with what we were requiring. And I was sort of surprised.
The technology has come on
Yeah.
a lot in the last few years. So you still see a lot of those older ones that don't have the full cut off and get the glow off them that goes in all directions. And they're not very well directed. These ones now, they're just so much more directed. So you get really, really nice, good, even lighting where you need it. You don't get any lighting that you don't need.
And so basically it shouldn't affect the surrounding community.
No, it shouldn't. I mean, another great example, one you mentioned is probably great for here, but now they do these things. If you're interested in athletic facilities, they have the big 80-foot lights and they're LED. And the ones they put in at Freeport, if you try and walk behind them where there's no pedestrian lights on, it's dark. I mean, full on dark, and the field is lit to 50-foot candles. So that's how good the technology is now on the lighting front.
Yeah, honestly, right up, you know, when you leave, right up by the bank.
Yeah.
Take a look, because it is pretty impressive.
Okay.
Not as much of an issue as it used to be, for sure.
It's the only place in town
That we have it there.
that's compliant with our current regulations. I mean, the big question everybody has is, you know, how did we get here? Having this really big project on a high spot in a residential neighborhood.
Well, Yeah.
As long as we're talking about lights, I have, do have a couple of questions about lights. So, when you look at these the parking lots here are pretty big. Approximately how many acres? I think we can all understand acres. How many acres of parking lot will there be? If anybody,
I do not know, but he could probably answer your question.
so approximately how many acres of parking lot will there be?
I'm gonna say that's about just under an acre.
Just under an acre. So we're gonna have an acre lit up all night long for part of the night. The light's gonna be on timers. Are they gonna be on sensors? I think at the last meeting, somebody spoke about the issues at the Lincoln Health Campus with the lights being on. If you read the ordinance is not very specific. It is very vague and says as needed. So what does as needed mean? The lights go on, there's a shift change. Will they be on sensors so that any car that pulls in, your pathway will be lit, like you're walking by the freezers at Hannaford? Is there something, because so the parking lot is an acre. My guess is there's going to be more lighting around the buildings. The buildings themselves are going to be lit up. This is on top of a hill. And when you're in that area, I think it's nice that you're using the LEDs with cutoff that just reflect down, but it's going to be a pretty large lit area. And my guess is not all the light will be absorbed. Some of it will be reflected off of surfaces and sent into different directions. So I'd love to see something more specific be put in if the project goes forward about lighting and how to address the concerns of the neighbors about lighting issues that might happen in the future. So,
What about using motion sensors, in the parking lots?
Well, I think there's a potential for that. I think the downside of those is the sensitivity of something. Anything will trigger them. I think it's more sensible to try to come with a plan. We have the basic plan that meets the ordinance that, as I said, with all the lights on. And then we can come up with a plan maybe that restricts some of the lighting. We just got to be a little bit careful about maintaining safe lighting levels. So people aren't, when they come to a shift change after dark, they're not getting out of the cars and tripping on curving, surfing because they can't see where they're going. So, there's a couple of different options there. You just got to treat that a little carefully, and I think it probably requires a little design. We'd be happy to work with staff to try and create something that works both for the operator and for staff that minimizes the lighting levels in there. It's a little tricky to do that, in this forum without developing the design and, to another level really on the lighting front. We'd be happy to look at it.
Yeah. In that instance, I might suggest a condition of approval to that effect, that the applicants would work with both myself and with the code enforcement officer to ensure that the lighting is turned down to the maximum or the minimum level needed for security. And that we would see the revised lighting plan unless there was a desire from the board to have it returned to you. But I might suggest either way you decide to go, that could be appropriate as a condition.
I don't think that's a bad way to go. I think that's a really good suggestion.
Should we make a motion or no, we're still in the hearing, right?
Yep, you're still in the hearing.
Still in here.
We would make a motion on that until the end of this.
Yeah.
So,
Are there any other comments from the public
Are you talking comments just on?
on anything having to do with this project?
Yes, I have a couple more, if I may.
Okay.
I know there's gonna be some traffic data presented hopefully this evening. If I may, I have a question about access to the property, if somebody could clarify. I know this is in the packet highlighted in yellow, so this is depicts the property. This is School Street, and you depict ownership of the property in yellow in the packet as having this section of Piper Mill Road and coming out to School Street. if somebody could clarify for me, I'm not clear on what you mean by the access to the property being back at this location. Would not the access to the property actually be at the entrance to Piper Mill Road at School Street?
That is the
Well, that is
road.
the entrance. They own either side of the road, and the road is actually on that property.
So if this is the entrance to the property, School Street is a state maintained road.
I've been told that there's no requirement for a main DOT permit, yet if the property is accessed from a state controlled road, there is a requirement for a main DOT review. I'm confused on that.
Yeah, so I think we had a conversation about this at the last meeting, and it's referenced in the memo for mostly the planning board and the public's knowledge. The main DOT has traffic movement permits, which are required for projects that will generate 99 trip ends in peak hours. That's a significant amount of trip ends. And that was the permit that I was referencing in my memo that is not required. I actually am not sure of DOT's requirements for an existing road, if they would need another like curb cut permit or access permit from them. I don't know that information, but the permit that I was referencing in my memo was a traffic movement permit, which is a separate thing.
So how do we clarify? The language that I have is any person proposing a driveway or entrance on one of the state aid roads must apply for a permit from Maine DOT.
I think that's referring to like an access permit or a
A new
curb
road.
cut permit, not a traffic movement permit with a capital T, capital M. It's sort of, they have multiple permitting structures through DOT.
So if the access to the property is here at School Street,
Mhm.
No.
That's my understanding is the access is often Piper Mill Road. They just happen to own Piper Mill Road. They're accessing the property from Piper Mill, not from School Street.
Right. And where Piper Mill is an existing road, I don't know that they would need any additional permitting from DOT for an existing road related to curb cuts or access permits.
I'm not aware of any either. You know, of an existing road.
Versus like when you put, building a new house on a state aid road and you're building a driveway, you would need like an access permit.
all right, there was some discussion about the adequacy of Piper Mill Road. Again, not in the ordinance, but in our comprehensive plan, and trying to look at this project. I agree wholeheartedly with my neighbor saying this is a big project that has been plopped down on us as sort of a complete project. And there are planning parts that I really think need to be taken into consideration. Our comprehensive plan points out that by encouraging or permitting development in areas that are served by inadequate roads, increased maintenance costs associated with future capital outlays may be avoided or at least delayed. Or served by adequate roads. If this is not being served by an adequate road, the town potentially in the future is going to incur costs for maintenance. These things have not been, I don't think, adequately represented by the developer. We've allowed them to, I don't know if it's a waiver. They didn't need to do the fiscal review. They presented a memo rather than a complete fiscal review. So I don't know where that comes in as far as, is that also a waiver?
Yes.
It's solely a private road.
Nope, Piper Mill is a private road.
It's a private road.
Yeah.
It's solely a
Town
private
doesn't
road.
pay.
It is a private road.
It's a private road.
Nope.
No,
No,
They contract out to plowers.
Yeah.
Private contractor
It's not-
plows the
it's
ambulance
not
station and.
town maintained, it's not town owned.
And then as far as what is also on the agenda this evening, future development on that road is being considered. Is there going to be a tipping point where that road does need to have further planning for its adequacy and who will be maintaining it and the amount of traffic that's going to be generated on that road?
If the town would take that over, the owners of the properties using the road would have to improve the road to town standards. So there's no danger of the town taking it over.
And it would have to go to a town meeting
Yeah,
vote
we'd
is
have
my
to go to a town
understanding.
Meeting vote, I mean,
And,
it could happen that the town would take it over, but it would have to be brought up to town standards.
and the overall traffic that may be coming off of that road due to multiple projects on the road. That was not considered by this project. There on the agenda tonight is another development being
Certainly
proposed.
is.
So when would a combined number of trips potentially go over 100 be considered?
That's a good point, but it's an issue with the state.
We don't have anything in our local ordinance. Obviously, we have to review impact projects based on their specific impact. I think that's a good sort of philosophical point about when is the tipping point. And frankly, I think that's something that the town needs to begin considering and either amending our comprehensive plan or amending our ordinances to reflect that community conversation. But I think it requires further discussion.
There is a trigger for traffic for Maine DOT. I was told if the properties came from the same parent parcel within the past 10 years. Does the planning board have the history on these parcels and if they are all from the same parent parcel within the last 10 years?
They are all from the same parent parcel. I do not have it off the top of my head if it was within the last 10 years. I would have to look back at the history of the subdivision plan, but that history was included in the last meeting packet. I just don't-
Older than 10 years.
I think it is too, if I remember correctly, but I don't want to say the wrong thing without looking at it myself.
May want to look at that.
What you're saying that the Ledgewood property was part of the,
It was all,
It was
yes,
all
it
one
was
big
all
land.
one large piece of
Including the
land.
ambulance station.
okay,
Ledgewood, all that land out through there was all one big private property.
So if that could be confirmed, I would appreciate that.
And what would that trigger?
Permitting, additional permitting with DOT.
I think that
DOT? All
the
right.
state has ways of looking at cumulative impacts.
Yeah.
I mean, we might not at the local level, but I think that they do.
Yeah.
Even, at the,
And then if I may just make a general statement, again, we are all concerned about the size of this project. As was pointed out, this is going to be 1.5 times the size of Hannaford's. This is zoned for village extension. I don't feel like this is a village plan. It's not commercial, I get that, it's not residential, but it is a business. It is a business that's needed, but is it needed on this scale, on this parcel? I don't agree with that. I think we need to consider some of the other impacts, the impervious surfaces that are going to be created in this could potentially impact downstream. Downstream from this, we have shellfish beds in Great Salt Bay. They're asking for waivers on buffers for different reasons, but buffers also provide a buffer to impervious surfaces. Other towns are seeing the impacts of large development and what it's having on water quality, shellfish beds, and the local economy. And they are reconsidering where and how these large developments should take place. And I'm asking you to take that into consideration as well. Thank you.
if you do look in the comprehensive plan, under the description of growth areas and the village expansion areas, which I think this was part of it, right?
Yeah.
The village expansion area. It says this area evolves as a residential extension of the village with moderate density housing that has a village character. Within these neighborhoods, the allowed uses would be within these neighborhoods, a range of residential uses should be allowed, including single-family and two-family dwellings, townhouses, small multifamily buildings. And it says the development of senior housing and retirement and elder care facilities should be allowed, but on a probably on a scale, on a residential scale. I think is when they were writing this, what they were thinking of. rather than this huge project. So I mean, what do you do if a project isn't necessarily consistent with the comprehensive, what you think might be the intent of the comprehensive plan?
I think that's something that you all need to discuss amongst yourselves. We don't have a specific reviewing ordinance standard regarding compliance with the comprehensive plan, but obviously generally our adopted ordinances need to be in compliance with the comprehensive plan. So it's a little bit of an odd situation. I think you would need to sort of make a finding on that as a board.
Well, I think we got to dig into, we can't assume that they're talking a nursing facility that's a small house versus a nursing facility. We can't just assume that that's what their
75,000
intention
square
was,
foot, yeah.
right? So we just got to dig into that.
Chris, one way of looking at it, if you look at the population of Damascata and you consider the percentage of the population that's here is in elderly, bracket. You could be up in the 75 to 80%. In other words, there is a tremendous demand for people to have a facility that will care for them in their later stages.
But this isn't really, this is just replacing existing facilities in Damascata and Booth Bay. This isn't really adding to the capacity necessarily, is it?
Depending on your point of view, Booth Bay certainly serves some of Damascata, and Damascata certainly serves some of Booth Bay and other communities in the area. Based on my assumption, there is a tremendous need. And as a community, I think it behooves us to address that need.
I had a question in regards to the comprehensive plan where it refers to scale. And isn't that defined in the ordinance based on density, height, max, size, those types of requirements? Isn't that how that's translated from the comprehensive plan to the ordinance?
Right. Our ordinances have to be found consistent with the comprehensive plan in order to be amended, and that's a state statute stipulation. Obviously, I wasn't here when the specific comprehensive plan was adopted, nor the immediately following ordinance amendments, but presuming that state statute was followed, you would have had to make it a positive finding that the proposed amendments to the ordinance were consistent with the comprehensive plan that was adopted, including density, height restrictions, frankly, the design standards in our site plan review ordinance, things like that.
It pretty much fits in with that.
How many acres is this parcel?
The overall parcel is about 19 acres, and the size that they cut off was, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was about 10 acres.
So it's like 9 acres. Because it says senior housing and elder care and retirement facilities should be allowed at a density of up to 12 to 15 units per acre if served by public sewage. I guess they can. I don't know. Surprisingly specific.
You still have the public hearing open if you want. You still have the public hearing open. just
Okay.
Nudging.
Well, if we close that.
Well, what
Pushed
would
into a corner. Go ahead.
Okay.
Before you close it, so the comp plan, I wrote this in my notes as well. So the 2014 comp plan vision for the village expansion area states the area evolves as a residential extension of the village with moderate density housing and has a village character. So this brings up the question, well, what does village character mean? If you think about village character, when you drive through downtown Damascata, the speed limit is 25. Nobody goes faster than 25 because you're constantly aware There's sidewalks on both sides. There's cars parked on the side of the road. You have an awareness that you're moving through an area where you need to go slow. This village character doesn't appear to exist on School Street. On High Street, it's a lot of people moving through very quickly to get from one place to another. People view it as a cut through. I think it would be wonderful if this project were built in a scale that would give Piper Mill Road a village character. Parking on both sides of the street, maybe the scale of this could be changed or somehow modified so that it didn't feel so large. And I'll reiterate again, if anybody wants to head up to Rockland, go to Cranberry Isle Road and take a look at the project that's being built up by this developer. It's very similar to the one that's proposed here, and the scale of it is really big. And I think one of the issues is that it's hard to look at these graphics and have a sense of scale. But I don't know that the scale of it is in fitting with a village character. And I think that it is, the comp plan does say that it wants to have elderly housing, which I agree with, but my issue is the scale. My question is, how does this development meet the requirement of the 2014 comp plan that it has village character? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Anybody else have anything else to say?
Just a quick question, because I didn't read it. Amy Lilleen, 10 Hodgson. So he said something about, somebody said something about a waiver having to do with water. I'm very concerned about water, and there is no waiver that has anything to that.
No.
So I'm just concerned about, the property in general, in our town, the trees, the water, the light.
Mhm.
So I'm here just to hear what is going on. I'm happy to hear the lights are going to be down. I don't know about, I have to say, I don't know if this is the right place to bring it up, that other towns protect their trees by measuring them before they cut them down. Maybe Freeport does this. And then if they take a big tree down, there's something that has to happen in order to, you probably know more than I do.
I'm chuckling because we just went through a 2-year-long process to adopt a tree protection ordinance when I worked in South Portland. And actually, I'm not sure if they have adopted it yet, but we were still working on it when I
Well, it
left.
kills me when they cut the big ones down and then just put little things that don't do the same thing. It's not a buffer.
Right.
What's in front of 405 Main or whatever it is, isn't really a buffer. There's nothing there. Anyway, there isn't anything that has to do with water, so we don't have to worry about the oysters, Oyster Creek.
Well, they have a series of small depressions around the outskirts of the project, which are swales that are going to be vegetated and serve as localized stormwater,
That's not a waiver.
For runoff from.
for runoff. And I mean, I think actually their stormwater management plan is pretty good. I mean, it incorporates a lot of the latest thinking in, what is it, LIDA? Is that what they call it?
Yeah, low impact
Low impact
development.
development stuff.
Okay. All right, as long as it doesn't go into that.
Yeah, I mean, it actually, this little creek down here is a very significant tributary to Kastner Creek. The creek between School Street and the development.
Yeah,
And-
that is Castle Creek.
Well, it's a tributary to Kastner Creek. It's
Yeah,
not the main
Kastner Creek.
branch of
Right.
Kastner Creek. It's a branch. It joins Kastner Creek in just a bit,
Right, so it.
but there's a lot of water in it.
Right, so it's a watershed that goes
Yeah.
that way, so I just want to put my 2 cents in that I want to protect it.
Amy Lilleen.
Anything else?
Oh, well, yes, because it seems like we're gonna shut down public hearing in just a minute. So a couple things, in the traffic study that was in this, in the planning board packet, there are pictures of turning right from Piper Mill Road to School Street, turning left from Piper Mill Road to School Street. There is one picture from High Street that's labeled turning right from High Street to School Street. That picture actually shows the left-hand turn from High Street to School Street, and there is no picture of turning right from High Street to School Street. And for the people that have traveled down that road, you'll know that when you get to the end of High Street and you're at the School Street intersection, when you look right, that is what causes people to pause at that intersection. The road curves, there's a bunch of trees that are on the property on the right-hand side of High Street and School Street that obstructs the view, not totally, but enough to make people hesitate. So I'd just like to, I'll be curious to hear what the traffic study indicates from that. And then the other thing that I saw, so in the November packet, when I went through it, I didn't read the whole thing, but I did notice that there was reference to Bar Harbor Fire Department regulations, hydrant regulations, and also Bar Harbor blasting regulations. So I don't know where those came from, but it was referenced as part of the November packet.
In the application materials.
It was like page 300 something. So it was the end of it. And so that just concerns me how complete the packet is.
Answer that. What's with the Bar Harbor thing?
Because you don't have an answer for that. It's obviously supposed to reference Damariscotta, but we can certainly correct that.
Okay. Yes, sir. Yep.
Good evening. My name is Daniel McGuire. I'm the managing partner of Sandy River Company. And I really appreciate being here tonight. And I really appreciate the comments from neighbors. I certainly get it. It is a big building. But it's also a very important building. It's big for one big reason, and we're developing an all private bedroom nursing home, which is unheard of in the state of Maine. It's a real gift to this community. I just want to remind you of that as one of the reasons why it is big. And it also serves 102 people, and it's replacing two other facilities. So it's not a new service, but it's an improved service and a very important service to the community. I'd venture to say probably everybody in this building will have some connection with this building at some point with your families and so forth. So I just want to remind you of the importance of what we're trying to accomplish here. Secondly, we know it's big, so we try to make it as small as we can. And the drawing there is not necessarily the best one, but it's residential grade construction. It's residential roofs. It's not a shopping center. It's not a hospital. It's not a brick building. It will feel very residential in scale. The windows are residential. The siding is residential. So it's not some big giant monster building. It's also broken up into houses. There's 6 different houses in this building, as you can see there. So when you're looking at it from a distance, and we've got 2 of them that we've just done, one in Sanford and one in Rockland, it's nearly complete. But when you look at it, you actually feel like you're looking at different houses. It's not some big, massive landscape building. I just want to make sure we're clear about what we're actually developing, why we're developing it, what the building's going to look like. And I think you'll be very proud of it when you see it. And I don't think it's going to, impact or be all the things that, we all worry about. I know I worry about things being built in my backyard, but I think this is going to be a pretty darn good project for this community. I just wanted to say that.
I had a question about wetlands, but I wanted to respond to that comment. I went to Rockland today for errands, so I took time to go and drive by the project he's referring to in Rockland. From the ocean side of it, there are, and when you talk about grading and construction, I get very nervous. And being on that site, I did not feel at all like it was a comfortable village feel. When you stand at the stormwater control structures on that site, you look up the impoundments and the grassways, and to me, it looked like a spaceship. It was a gigantic building peeking out behind these man-made water control structures. So I would love to have gone there and seen a village feel facility that will serve the elderly in the future. I did not get that feeling. It has nice shingles, it has beautiful windows, it has impressive construction. As far as feeling small, comfortable, village-like, I 100% disagree. I would encourage the planning board to take a field trip there if that were all possible, if that is something that you need to consider. As far as water quality issues, I would like clarification on the wetlands. This site will be impacting a size of wetlands that is great enough to trigger state review, a tier 1 review. To say that it's not impacting water quality, that it's not going to impact this important stream in our community that feeds to shellfish beds in the Great Salt Bay, I also disagree with. If you are impacting a wetland and need to require a tier 1 review from the state, I think that could potentially have negative impacts on the water quality of the watershed. I understand now, I felt like at the last meeting, they indicated that they had all of their permits from the DEP in place. They have their applications in place. They do not yet have a review from DEP or Army Corps of Engineers. Do we have any update on the timeline for that? And I would also request that rather than fast pacing a project that is the potentially largest project recently in Damariscotta, before we have information on permits that are going to impact water quality, et cetera, that rather than making that a condition of approval, that we would wait for that information before approving this project. But before we ponder that, do we have a timeline on when these applications might be processed?
Andy, you can't see, but I'm turning to you for an update.
Happy to answer that. Because we actually have some recent relatively good news on that front. So all the reasons for concern about water quality and shellfish beds and impacts to the stream and impacts to the wetlands is the very reason why the state regulates all of those things. So they regulate it under two statutes, Site Location and Development Act for larger projects, which this actually triggers, and the Natural Resources Protection Act. The wetlands impacts are also governed by the Army Corps of Engineers. So as far as the permitting status goes on this, we have our Army Corps of Engineers permit for the wetland impacts. We are in the midst of the DEP review for both Site Location and Natural Resources Protection Act. We do have, as an update, we have addressed all the geology comments from Maine DEP. We also have, and I have a copy of it here, the Stormwater Management Technical Review Memorandum, which indicates that their stormwater review is complete and that it meets all the required standards. That is not the same as getting the final site location permit. What it indicates is that the stormwater system that we've designed for the site has been reviewed by the DEP review engineer and it meets all their standards. So there are very good reasons why those standards are in place, and we do the best we can to address them thoroughly in an application. And so we have some good news on that front. We are hoping that that site location and natural resources permit will be issued by the end of this month, somewhere around the holidays. It depends who's in, out and about around the holidays. Sometimes it takes a couple of weeks to get them signed. But the majority of the technical review, as said, on the geology front, the stormwater front is complete from DEP, and we have the Army Corps permit.
I have a question. Are there any mitigation measures that are required when you, tear up wetlands?
They're not under a tier one. So that's where you have the different thresholds. There's a tier one wetland permit, there's a tier two wetland permit, which goes over the threshold for mitigation.
Mhm.
Once you get over that threshold, then you do have to either pay an inland fee, compensate in the form of recreating wetlands or
Okay.
preserving wetlands.
Anybody else from the public?
I just wanted to confirm that we're gonna be hearing from the traffic report and
On the what?
I wanted to confirm that we're gonna be hearing further traffic data and why pictures were mislabeled and why there is not data on the turn from High Street turning right onto School Street, and is that actually a 300 and whatever site distance as required?
So
Well, that's coming from High Street, correct?
Right, an employee or visitor to the nursing home could easily be coming down High Street,
Oh, they
needing
could.
to cross that intersection
Yeah.
and entering Piper Mill.
Well, we have the gentleman right here that actually handles that. But if there's nothing else to be said from the public,
Well,
if we close,
should we have him give some information on it?
we certainly can.
Why don't we do that?
Go ahead. Might raise up another question, who knows?
That's what she was asking for.
Good evening. I'm Bill Bray with Botnell Judas, and I'm responsible for the traffic portion of this project. At the last meeting in November, you had requested that we conduct 2 additional studies, if you will, within the general area of the proposed project. One of those you had asked for site distance measurements coming out of Piper Mill Road, looking in both directions on School Street. And the second, you had asked to have me obtain the latest roadway accident data for the intersection of School Street at Bristol Road. I've submitted I think a 3-page document that summarizes that information. I believe it was included in your packet this evening, but I can go over that in some detail, but I can also just kind of give you the highlights of it. And if you want me to expand, I'll be happy to do that. The site distance measurements on Piper Mill Road were measured in accordance with DOT standards. They were measured from a point that's 10 feet back from the edge of pavement. Again, it's a DOT requirement. And it was measured from a height of 3.5 feet above the pavement, looking to an object in the center of the approaching lane, depending on which direction you're looking at, that's 4.25 feet above the pavement. And in both cases, you look to the center of the approaching travel lane. School Street is posted at 35 miles an hour. The required minimum site distance is 305 feet. We took measurements that exceed 350 feet in both directions of travel. There are no obstructions in either direction that prohibit impact. I'm sure you could get close to 400 feet if you wanted. I just didn't carry it any further than that, but 350 feet is what's required for a 40-mile-an-hour street. So we're again well above what the posted speed limit requirement is. There was questions raised about the existing sanitary sewer directional sign that sits right close to the intersection. I went out and measured that, and from the nearest edge of that sign to the existing edge of pavement is 16 feet. So it sets back from where the actual site distance is measured from. So again, in both directions of traffic, we meet and exceed the minimum standard that's required by Maine DOT. There really wasn't a request to look at the High Street approach, but while I was there, I did because I thought that perhaps it was something that may come up, and I wanted to make sure that at least while I was here, that I took that information. Looking to the left from High Street, you can easily meet 350 feet. Again, more than what's necessary for a 35 mile an hour speed limit. And in my document that I sent up, I specifically referenced the sight line looking to the right coming out of High Street. I suggested that there is some low-level vegetation and 2 or 3 mature trees, I'm going to say medium-sized trees, that do sort of limit sight distance, although you can get 305 feet of sight distance. It's a very close call. Unfortunately, I cannot tell you that when the trees are fully covered with leaves in the early spring months, whether that same sight distance line exists. However, I did recommend, and it's right in the body of this report that I sent, that in fact, consideration be given to improving the sight distance by removing the low-level brush. And in fact, if it's in the public right of way, remove at least a couple of those trees to improve that sight line. And that's why the picture that is shown in the report, I actually stood back on the left side of the intersection so that I could capture the actually impact. And that's why that picture looks like I'm taking this left sight distance, but I'm really standing there so I can capture the sight restrictions on the right turn, if you will, from High Street.
There's a date issue.
No, I would think that perhaps that may be a local maintenance issue by the town, but I don't know that. I don't know what how the town works with Maine DOT. I would suspect it's probably a local highway department's responsibility to do that brush clearing. It's something, again, if you're going to do it, though, it really ought to be maintained on an annual or at least a biannual basis, just so that it doesn't grow up, because it's just going to continue to get larger and larger and spread out, and it's just going to restrict sight distance more. But clearly the sight distance is there. It's just a matter of clearing some of that brush and small tree growth out of the way so that it opens up that sight distance window. The second item that you had asked for us to look at was, again, to identify the latest highway crash information for the intersection of School Street at Bristol Road. I contacted Maine DOT Safety Bureau and asked for that data for the latest 3-year time period, which is 2019 through 2021. There were a total of 7 accidents that occurred during that time period with a critical rate factor. And before I stumble over my own notes here, let me just make sure I tell that correctly. Its critical rate factor is 2.47. Anything over 1 is greater than what was expected for a for an intersection of that geometric outline and volume within the intersection. Again, as I stated at the last meeting, Maine DOT considers any intersection that has both of the following criteria have to be met. There has to be 8 or more traffic crashes occurring in the 7 years, and the critical rate factor has to be in excess of 1. The intersection, based on the data that I received from Maine DOT, and that's the latest 3-year study period, does not meet Maine DOT's requirements for identification of a high crash location. I took your request a little bit further. I stayed in the general area of the intersection for between 30 and 45 minutes to kind of watch traffic through the intersection. I made some observations. I also have a vehicle collision diagram that Maine DOT provided that identifies the crash patterns of each of the 7 accidents. 6 of the 7 accidents, just to give you a little bit of the information, were considered angle accidents, with 3 of them coming out of School Street being struck with vehicles traveling, I guess that would be east to west on Bristol Road. And then there were 2 additional ones with the reverse direction of Bristol Road colliding with the vehicles coming out of School Street. And then there was actually 1 left turn accident with a vehicle turning left into school, hitting a vehicle turning left out of School Street. And then the 7th and final accident was unrelated. It was a vehicle during a winter travel conditions. That's the road at the intersection. I checked vehicle sight distance in both directions. You've got over 375 feet of sight distance in both directions. It doesn't look it until you actually get there and measure it. If you're familiar with the area, looking from the east approach of Bristol Road, there's I wrote it down so that I wouldn't forget where the measurement was taken from. There's a mailbox up there that's house number 150, and that's where the measurement was taken, and that was 400 feet back to the intersection. So approaching vehicles on Bristol Road have an opportunity to view people coming out of the School Street approach based on travel speeds of 35 miles an hour. Because again, that's what the measurements were. Bristol Road's posted at 35. Again, the required minimum sight distance is 305 feet there. Just to give you a few other facts about the crashes, there was 2 of the 7 crashes that occurred during the evening rush hour. The majority of the remaining accidents all occurred between 9 in the morning and 1:30 in the afternoon. There were 2 of the 7 crashes that happened during the summer months. The rest of the accidents actually happened during the non-summer months. The reporting police officer noted on each of the crashes that occurred in the intersection, identified that 6 of the 7 crashes were a result of a motorist on the School Street approach failing to yield to the through traffic on either of the 2 Bristol Road approaches. Some of the observations that I noted at the intersection, again, just to repeat, vehicle sight distance is met in looking in both directions. I did notice that the approach speeds of vehicles on either approach of Bristol Road, again, in my opinion, and I've been doing this work for a lot of years, were going somewhat excessive speeds above the 35 mile an hour posted speed limit. And I'm sure that has a direct correlation to the number of angle accidents that happen. People are coming too fast and they pick up somebody, but they don't have time to react and slow down. Couple other notes that I picked up is there's a striped island in the middle of the School Street approach. There's basically a Y or a triangular shape to that island. If you look at some of the old Google imagery, that island used to have what is referred to as gore markings that kind of provide additional definition of where the island is, but it's not there now. It's presently just got 2 yellow lines that again form that Y shape at the intersection. There's a stop sign at the intersection on School Street. There is not a stop line that's striped. I would personally recommend that be something that be considered. It at least defines where that School Street motorist should stop so that people can see them and they can see the approaching vehicles. A couple of recommendations that I would suggest is that, that consideration be given to increasing speed enforcement along Bristol Road and or the utilizing one of the radar controlled speed measurement devices that are often used in most communities. They kind of circulate them through the community to try to encourage people to slow down. Other than that, the intersection probably should be looked at long-term to see if it warrants any corrective action, but I hope that satisfies what you folks had requested of myself. And then I tried to do a comprehensive review of it, and I hope you accept that as what I provided.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'll be happy to answer questions if you have some.
Does anybody in the public have any questions about this? Go ahead.
Yeah, so you stated on the High Street and School Street intersection, when you're making a right-hand turn, you said it would be hard to get 400 feet of sight distance. It would be required over a 40 mile an hour road.
It's actually 360 feet for a 40 mile an hour road, but it's posted at 35, so it requires 305 feet.
So you think most people drive 35 miles an hour on School Street?
I would agree with you. They probably don't, but I am required to measure sight distance based on the posted speed limit.
So
That's a state standard.
But in real world examples, if you drive 35 miles an hour on School Street, people will stack up behind. So, we're right on the edge of of the safety specs.
He also mentioned that could be cleared out. There's a lot of brush growing in around there and probably needs to be cleaned. And that would be up
Some
to
of it's on private property.
Well, I think that's something we have to go to the town manager for and let them decide whether it's
That's
within the
not-
right of way of the town or if it's a state road, if it's within the state right of way. But that's something that's out of our control. We can pass that on to them.
Yeah,
But
we don't
this
do
gentleman's
that.
point, he can only give us information based off what the regulations are. None of us in this room can control the speed on what people drive on Bristol Road, School Street, or Piper Mill. We can only make our best decision off the information that's given per the regulation.
And consider it when approving a project that might be too large for the area it's being proposed.
I'd like to comment to that last statement if I may. If you look at my earlier traffic assessment, this project will generate 34 vehicle trips in the very highest hour of a typical week. That's one vehicle trip every two minutes, plus or minus. That's a very, very low traffic generator in comparison to, even a residential development that has 40 homes in it is going to generate more traffic than this does. I just would reference you back to my earlier study where we actually provide the trip generation of the project. And the trip generation, the residents in a nursing home do not drive. It's visitors.
And the staff.
And staff and, an occasional service person or something that's servicing something within the building. But other than that, that's the only traffic that's generated by one of these
Say
facilities.
one vehicle roughly every 2 minutes.
That's what it is, sir. Yes, sir. 34 trips during the worst hour of the week.
What is the worst hour of the week?
I would.
I'm just
Well,
interested.
no, I would guess that it's probably either sometime on a Saturday.
Yeah,
Or it could be in the early evening hours of maybe a Tuesday or Wednesday during the week
when visitors are coming in.
yeah, when folks want to go over and visit their loved ones in the facility. But it varies, from one location to the other, but generally speaking, I would say that's when it probably shows up.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
I just have one other quick comment. There's by the book and then there's the reality. One of the other things on the planning board's agenda for this evening is a proposed 52 house development on Piper Mill Road. So it's a trip every
36.
36.
Unit.
So if it's a trip
32.
every.
32.
If it could be.
It's 32.
So when you add that, the trips that are created by the nursing home, then we have a more complicated situation at that intersection of Piper Mill Road and School Street. And so, just to think ahead of what's going to happen and how to make this as safe as possible. I think it's important to think about this intersection.
If I could again respond to that particular comment, just to be helpful. One of the things that could very easily be done at that intersection is laid out, if you will, designed, if you will, as a four-way intersection. It would not be an unacceptable improvement to go out there and just create a four-way stop intersection. And then that way, everybody has to stop at the intersection. You improve sight distance, you reduce travel speeds, you even give an opportunity for a pedestrian that wants to cross the street because everybody has to come to a stop. And if it doesn't work, the worst case you got to do is take the two of the four stop signs down. But that intersection is really, it's got a fair amount of traffic that goes on School Street, but both side streets are not that heavy when you look at the amount of traffic that an intersection can actually handle. But I would just offer that solution because it's a very simple solution to implement. If it doesn't work, you take it down and turn right back to what you have. But it's pretty easily to, you got two $65 stop signs and a signpost and you put them in the ground, you got a four-way stop intersection. And it
Certainly slow traffic down.
Well, it sure does when you come to that stop sign.
Yeah.
Or they better stop there. That's the intent of it, but.
School Street's pretty heavily used in the summer, the bypass to downtown.
But again, a four-way stop can actually handle surprisingly a lot more traffic than you think it does, but it has a real impact on slowing traffic down.
Yeah.
It does.
But can we do that on the state road?
It's not
You'd have to
state-
contact DOT, but yes, I'm quite sure that they would allow you to do that.
And state aid, not state
Yep.
road, state aid road.
You may even have maintenance responsibility on that road. I don't know that, but you might.
Something to
It
look into.
depends on whether you're in the compact area or the non-compact area of the road. If it's in the compact, you probably have maintenance requirements already.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you have any more other questions?
From the public or the planning board?
You're part of the public bill.
Well, I have a question about the landscaping plan. You mentioned something like 46 conifers are going to be planted. There's like 110 trees, I forget what it is. But where are you planting all your evergreens? You know, where are you planning on planting this?
So we have some new buffer trees down right along the edge, which are actually shown on these renderings. You'll notice we put them in here, we put them in at the scale that they're actually going to be planted at.
So they're like 7-foot conifers or?
Yeah, they're probably 6 or 7 feet high, and there's a mix in there. So there's some deciduous trees, and then there's some, of course, around the edges here and here, and it's spread through the courtyards as well, through the interior of the site. So there is a pretty substantial row of buffer trees in here, and as I say, we've shown them on the rendering at the stage where they're going to be planted. So we haven't exaggerated what they're going to look like when the building is first built. They will grow in a lot heavier than that.
So what species are,
It's right here, Jenny.
okay,
It's right here.
okay,
There are
see
swamp,
that.
white oak, white spruce, red pine, and eastern red cedar.
okay, so a lot of native trees.
I think they're all native, actually. I
Yeah.
don't think there's anything that-
These are all native, too.
I'm not-
So it's a real mix. It's going to be like sort of a mixed buffer of evergreen and deciduous, high,
Yeah,
tall
what we're
and,
trying to do is kind of, well, I mean, everybody here was on the sidewalks, and there's a mixture of woodland actually around the
Right.
site now. And so you tend to find limit that, so they're not all gonna be, it's not gonna be a monoculture of all the same trees, it's gonna be varied.
Over in here, they got a bunch of larch planted in here.
yeah. I mean, larch aren't very, don't really,
There's a bunch of other stuff, though. There is, I'm not sure what a shad is.
it's just a small bush.
Yeah. But there's white spruce in there too. Winterberry, this is mostly shrubs right in here. Those are larch. This is
I think a lot
existing
of those
woodland.
plantings are for
This
the,
is it, yeah.
for the wetland sites, the storm,
This is existing woodland. This is existing woodland.
okay.
This is existing woodland. I will tell you, one of the things I'd like to see done is I'd like to make sure that this buffer doesn't end up like some of the buffers do. It should-
Like a
like,
real visual
every
screen,
staggered.
and like, okay, I don't know if you've ever been down. My favorite roadside buffer is alongside the Booth Bay golf course, that guy built along the dump road. I don't know who did that, but they did a really good job. Between the dump road and the golf course.
Yeah.
It's just a beautiful buffer, vegetated buffer with, tall trees, I mean, all different types of vegetation. Evergreen vegetation.
It seems like the concern that Jonathan was pointing out was that you know, you want something in place if something dies or otherwise doesn't,
I want to make sure that it gets as dense as it can also.
yeah.
Yeah, well, we don't want just, a little tiny tree
Yeah.
every 10 feet that doesn't grow,
I want to make sure it's something that's going to grow and something that actually is going to be a screen and a buffer.
right?
I put in a suggested condition that if landscaping dies, is removed, or otherwise requires replacement, is not replaced within 30 days, or is seasonally required by the species, it would be considered a violation of this approval of any approval granted by this board and shall be subject to enforcement provisions.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty standard to have something like that. But what we've seen around here when we've required vegetated buffers is we don't get them. We get like a tree every, a dumb little ginkgo tree, planted somewhere. I know you're not planting any ginkgos. Thank you. Not that I'm against ginkgos, but they've been around for a long time. Ginkgo trees. So I just want to make sure that we really plant enough, like some rhododendrons, just different.
I don't know about rhododendrons. They don't get tall enough. I mean, you could plant rhododendrons around for beautification, but I'm talking about screening.
Okay.
What I'd like to see is something that's going to grow fairly quick and be fairly dense.
Yeah,
Fir trees are a perfect example. They get high and dense quickly.
yeah, fir trees would be great.
Fir trees are really good.
And there
Some of
is
these-
that little grove of white pines that they're leaving down along the stream, between the stream and the parking lot.
One of the whole killer things in here is a lot of these, like white oaks are gonna drop their leaves in the fall. And that's an issue with that. Pretty much lends them to not being a buffer anymore.
And, white oaks, well. They grow in that area, but it's at the northernmost end of their range. They're stressed.
Chair, could I have clarification on the process?
Yeah, are we still in the public hearing? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, or
Okay, because we need to wrap up the public hearing.
Well, if I could just have clarity on the public hearing. So there are outstanding questions about, the application references Bar Harbor. There's the question of the 10-year look back on the parent lot, and does it trigger Maine DOT? Are those questions answered before the public hearing is closed? Will this public hearing be continued? Or what is the timeline for the rest of the process?
I can at least verify the parent lot question right now. The overall subdivision prior to this most recent amendment was in 2007.
Anything built after 2012 would be grandfathered on the DOT's rule. That's their rules for traffic movement permits.
Okay.
Rules and regulations.
And as far as deeming an application complete when it has errors such as referring to things like Bar Harbor, fire hydrants,
He's
et
gonna
cetera.
fix that.
So the application is not complete until those things are,
Till that's fixed. Agree.
and then is there going to be further public hearing opportunities, or once this is closed,
Once the public hearing is closed, the ordinance does provide that you need to make a decision within, I believe, 30 days.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I'm not sure if I want to
thank you.
close this public hearing for that reason.
Okay.
Because
Then you
I
need,
think that some of these things need to be straightened out. I think we've got most of the information from that.
I think, if you're not prepared to make a decision, you need to explain to the applicants exactly what you're looking for from them in terms of additional or supplemental application materials.
Well, this is true. This is also true. Absolutely.
the way I would view the public hearing. It is to solicit, information from the public. I think they've had an excellent opportunity for that. If we close the public hearing, our meetings are open to the public. And believe it or not, I think as chairman, you can accept questions.
I usually do,
That's right.
but we'll have to make a decision on this within 30 days.
Correct.
No, I understand that, but that's the applicant's problem, getting the information in order in 30 days, not our.
I also, I mean, to be honest, I'm a little bit confused as to what additional information you're looking for that couldn't be addressed through a condition, but
Information.
yeah. So I guess we would need to understand that from you all.
DOT trigger is not an issue because of the last subdivision, correct?
Correct.
I mean, the only outstanding issue we had was the clarification on a typo,
Yeah,
here as I can tell. I think all other questions have been answered from either the planning board or the public.
and to the public.
Correct. So I don't think there's anything outstanding other than that typo
Is that
that
something?
that I'm aware of.
Are you in-
Last chance.
Last chance. So the DEP permit for wetlands, when is that decided, whether you'll make that a condition of approval or you will wait on that?
You can make that contingent on.
You can,
Yeah.
but you also don't have to.
So at least with my suggested findings of fact and conditions of approval, if you choose to go the route as I drafted it, that would sort of be when they would make that decision. The suggested motion would be, adopt the project with the findings of fact and conditions of approval as drafted by staff, with additional condition 22 regarding the minimum security lighting, if that was appropriate. I think we kind of discussed that, but
And why are you suggesting that be a condition of approval? It's rather than slowing the process down. It doesn't seem to be procedure to make it a rapid. I believe you're working for Damascotta, so
Yeah.
I'm hoping that maybe we would say slow the process down rather than saying make it a condition of approval, everything is in place, let's go ahead.
yeah, I think my role as staff is, again, I don't have any decision-making authority. My role is simply to provide a professional recommendation based on my review of the project. It's up to the planning board whether or not they would agree with that recommendation. Frankly, where the pre-application was submitted back in August, we've now had 2 public hearings on this. In my view, I'm comfortable with them submitting the documentation prior to the issuance of any building permits on the project. But that is ultimately a decision for the decision makers in the room to weigh in on.
I think Isabel, with my vote going up and down, I wish I wasn't sitting here right now, but being a resident of School Street, across the street from Jeff, I know how people travel on this road. And we're gonna hear about another project tonight, across the street from this project.
Fairly
Going to
good size-
affect it.
and a fairly good size one.
I mean, if you think this project should go through and I could recuse myself, I probably would. Because I don't have enough information yet on this. And I've lived there for 50 years.
So I guess my response to that would be, again, like, what specific information are you looking for from the applicants to provide you? The alternative is,
Giving me the information I want to hear on their project, yes.
okay, and frankly, it's not, I think that the broader philosophical question of traffic impacts in this community and the cumulative traffic impacts generated as part of development projects is something that the community is wrestling with and needs to wrestle with further. The applicants well, the purpose of the site plan review ordinance is not for the applicants to attempt to address every potential impact as a result of other projects surrounding them. They are only required to provide information on their specific project. I think the broader cumulative traffic impacts are something for the town and the planning board to discuss, but I don't know that that's something that we can make these applicants provide information on, as you're noting. I guess I should add that the other alternative is obviously always, well, I guess you have a couple of options. The public hearing is still open. You could continue the public hearing pending additional information from the applicants. I'm not sure what that additional information is, but if there is something that you're looking for, please don't feel that you are being forced to make a decision on this evening. You should get the information that you need. Sort of the second option would be to, the way that I have drafted my findings of fact and conditions of approval on the project, in my view, are legally sufficient to protect the community and have demonstrated that the applicants have met the standards of the ordinance.
That's the issue right there. They have met the standards of the ordinance.
And then sort of the third route is, of course, you could close the public hearing and make alternative findings of fact. So it would be going through each of the review standards, and I can help walk you through that process if you feel that the applicant has not demonstrated that they have met the standards of the ordinance. But I'm not sure. There's sort of your alternatives at this point, and I'm happy to walk you through any of them.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
What is the procedure beyond? So you close the public hearing, you make a decision. What is the procedure beyond that? What happens in the town once you make a decision one way or another?
Are you asking for like I call it like the condition compliance phase of the project. So I'll give a hypothetical to demonstrate.
Uh-huh.
So let's say a project is approved with the 22 conditions listed here. The next step would be for the applicants to begin fulfilling those conditions of approval.
Okay.
Some of these are delegated to the town planner, some are delegated to the code officer, and a couple here are even delegated to the fire chief. So they would be working with staff to, whether it's submitting, for example, the exact location and details of a Knox box to the fire department, the final locations of hydrants to the fire department, things like that. They would be submitting those paperwork or their fulfillment of their conditions to the relevant town staff listed in the memo. After that, once they've fulfilled, and I think if you kind of look at the chart as I've drafted it, there must be completed by dates. Some of these are ongoing, basically intended to be a record for anyone who picks up the findings document to say, oh, for example, the landscaping condition that I mentioned, that's an ongoing condition for the life of this project. But then some of them are related to prior to submitting a building permit. So before they can even submit a building permit to the code officer, they need to have met those conditions. And then there are a couple related to issuance of a building permit. So that means that the code officer can begin reviewing their permit, but cannot issue it until those conditions are met. And then there is a sort of final phase that we call the certificate of occupancy or the final inspection. And that's when they're basically able to use the building as intended. And those will be verified by the code officer and myself by going on an inspection typically.
So the decision made by the planning board essentially is a go, no go. If you all agree that it happens, then it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Essentially. So this is the big decision that gets made.
Well, we have 30 days, right?
Correct.
After the end of this hearing.
But if the planning board agrees that this project is going to go forward, there is effectively, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
What is that realistic?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a big decision.
Yeah,
I mean,
is.
it's
Now, you also got to remember, we have ordinances that we have to follow. We have to stay within those
Yeah.
ordinances.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, there's nothing in these ordinances that I'm seeing that will stop this project.
But what if it doesn't really
But-
comply with the comprehensive plan?
we need to discuss that then.
Jenny, isn't that a judgment right now? So,
I don't know. What do you mean a judgment? It's written down. The kind of development that's allowed in these various areas.
it's a judgment.
Let me ask you a question, Elizabeth. In your experience, what do you find with ordinances of conflict? Say that this is okay in some ordinances, and in this comprehensive plan, it says it is not.
So actually, I will
Technically not.
I will speak to past experience. So typically, there's also a provision in the ordinance that the project as proposed is consistent with the comprehensive plan. We don't have anything like that in our ordinances.
Don't.
In that case, we defer to state statute regarding the adoption of our ordinances. Again, like I mentioned, I wasn't obviously here at the time that the comprehensive plan was adopted, nor the ordinances that were adopted as a response to it. But one of the findings that the planning board needs to make in their recommendation to the select board, and that the select board has to make in their recommendation to the overall town, is that the ordinances as drafted are consistent with the comprehensive plan. So in that case, you would sort of defer to the ordinances. And if there is a question about the ordinances not being consistent with the comprehensive plan, that's sort of a separate issue that could frankly be challenged in court, but it wouldn't impact this project per se.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think of all that?
Just as clear could be.
So if you're gonna shut it down, I would just really like to reiterate my question from earlier. How does this development meet the requirement from the 2014 comp plan that it has a village character? And is a 75,000 square foot
That's what we were just discussing.
building? Yes, I know. And I'd just like to reiterate that. And what is village character? If you tell the developer, hey, it can only be 30,000 square feet, my guess is their economies of scale don't make sense. And they say, no, thanks, because clearly they have developed a project that is remarkably similar to the building on Cranberry Isle Road in Rockland. So they have figured out, they have a formula. And does their formula match the requirements of our 2014 comp plan and the village character? So.
What part of that were you picking on anyway?
It's just this development
section there.
standards, and it's on page 25 of the. This is the growth area, village expansion area.
Mhm.
That's what this land is.
You guys are familiar with this?
I've seen it, but I don't know it off the top of my head.
I'm gonna pass this down. I want you guys to read this.
Or why don't you read it?
Okay.
Yeah.
You want me to do
It's
that?
2 paragraphs.
Okay, I'm gonna start right with step 1, vision. And this is for the growth areas, village expansion areas. This area evolves as a residential extension of the village with moderate density housing that has a village character. Allowable uses. Within these neighborhoods, a range of residential uses should be allowed, including single-family and two-family dwellings, townhouses, and small multi-family buildings. The development of senior housing and retirement and elder care facilities should also be allowed. In addition, accessory apartments should be allowed provided that the residential character of the home is maintained.
A limited number of non-residential uses should be permitted, including home occupations, as well as small-scale professional offices, artists and craftsman studios, and antique dealers within a mixed-use building that fronts on School Street. So it doesn't necessarily have to front on School Street, but development standards. The basic development standard in these neighborhoods should be similar to the standards for the village expansion area, with a basic 10,000 square foot minimum lot size with public sewerage and provisions of higher densities for projects that include small dwelling units. The standards should provide for a 20% density bonus for projects such as transfer of development rights from land in the rural area. Senior housing and elder care and retirement facilities should be allowed at a density of up to 12 to 15 units per acre if served by public sewerage. The standards for this district should require that new residential projects be designed to have a pedestrian orientation and be linked to the village to the extent possible. 12, how many units?
So
go in there?
15 units per acre. They're building on 9 acres. You can have 135 units.
Yeah. Yep.
So according to the way that's written,
Yes.
that complies with it.
Yeah. It does.
The
But-
real debatable part of all of this is that we're all very good at. And when you know what 75,000 is, and what 30 is, you know what 10 is, you know, all of these numbers. What the big debate is, the interpretation of atmosphere or feel or those kinds of things. And everybody has their own interpretation. Two people can have a different interpretation on what 10 acres is. 10 acres is clearly defined. And, you know, people in the right profession can tell you exactly what it is. So that's what we're dealing with. I would.
When this was developed, the big nursing home facilities, you know, and were basically, well, there was, I mean, in town anyways, we're at the hospital, in the hospital area. I don't, you know, it was a failure of imagination to think that there could be a really massive senior care development.
There'd be a lot of other massive
Located.
development
Yeah.
coming down the pike too.
Yeah.
Not just that, but other massive things.
Well, and as I said earlier, you know, you look at the population here. You know, the age and who's here, there is age.
I know, but this isn't adding. This capacity already exists in this area. This is just going to be replacing older facilities with newer facilities. Which is good.
Down the
you know.
road, if there's a greater demand, there'll probably be more such facilities available to the folks.
Well, unlike Danny, I can recuse myself from this, and I'm going to. But I don't see how we can't continue moving forward if we don't, if everything that's been presented meets our ordinance. I'm not sure what other avenue we have to prolong this. I hear from these folks 110%, and I agree, but our job is to follow the ordinance as it's written, and we've just confirmed that the comprehensive plan is tied in with our ordinances. And I'm not sure what else we can do. We can't ask these folks to come back for no reason. We have to have a reason in order for them that we're lacking evidence. And we haven't got anything other than the conditional approval that Isabel has put in her note. That they have to meet those before it continues step by step. I'm just not sure what else we can ask of them.
Usually conditional approvals right here, conditions of approval.
Yes, they start on page 16 of the memo, and there are 20,
21, and I think you added the lights as 22.
yes.
That's the thing.
You know, the other thing that we have no control of is the High Street intersection. I agree. Coming out of High Street and looking right is horrible. He proved that you can get there, but that's something that we can't. We have to have the town look into that and see if that can be done. And as much as we can sit here and say, we know we have another project coming up, we can't ask these folks to jump through hoops that this one's gonna cause. That's up to these people to fix those ones, not this group.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Yes, they go hand in hand. Unfortunately, they're on the same road, but it's two different projects. And I think we gotta look at this one as a whole.
So just I have the same, I printed out the wording for the comp plan. So the standards for this district should require that new residential projects be designed to have a pedestrian orientation and be linked to the village to the extent possible. So does this project have a pedestrian orientation
It does within its boundaries.
within its boundaries? And is it linked to the village to the extent possible? My guess is most people that will go to this facility are gonna get in their car and drive there. When the state makes changes to School Street and Main Street, they're gonna go down to Bristol Road, they're gonna drive up High Street, and they're gonna cross School Street to get to this facility. So I don't understand how it has pedestrian orientation if the only way to get there is in a car. Because as we established in the last meeting, the sidewalk that the facility will build will end at School Street and Piper Mill Road. There'll be no crosswalk if there's no stop signs and you want to cross that road. You gotta walk across it, you gotta walk down High Street, you want to get to the village, and there's no sidewalk on High Street. So the planning of this is much more complicated than just.
You guys hear that? It's still that. Well. I think, I mean, I don't think they're not gonna put a crosswalk in there and they're not gonna put a sidewalk clear down to Bristol Road. It's not gonna happen. So, I mean, the fact that they're gonna put a sidewalk in School Street at least is a start. So that in itself would be an improvement. Well,
But honestly, how much pedestrian, for this project, how much pedestrian traffic will there actually?
literally zero. Zero.
For this project.
I mean, you might have somebody walking up there to go to work. You know, there's some housing on High Street. Some of those people on High Street may go to work there, maybe some people in Damascotta, you know, downtown in apartments.
I just wanted to note that I'm recommending the condition of approval for the installation of a sidewalk because School Street was identified as the #1 priority in the 2015 Bike Ped Master Plan for funding of future public sidewalks. And my sort of philosophy on that is that sidewalks to nowhere for the moment are better than not having the sidewalks in the future once we do get the School Street ones built. So that was the thought process behind that recommended condition. Well, that's.
How much sidewalk are you recommending? To just
Yep, the frontage of the parcel to the intersection with School Street.
I walk that route all the time. I guess I feel like we want to permit what's inside the box because they take everything off and they presented their application and they've done all their work and there's no reason why you can't say no to what's in the box. But what's outside the box that's going to be affected is really complicated and who's going to do that? Because if the next project goes in and then they do need sidewalks to get downtown and it just, and I know you can't put one I don't know, it's just like, okay, so we say okay to them, and then the next one's coming and we decide whether it's okay for them. And meanwhile, we still need sidewalks and we need to get places. But how did that all happen? It's, none of these projects will pay for it.
No, they won't.
And they can't because at this point, we don't have an impact fee ordinance.
But isn't this property his property?
No. The tip ends about two or three parcels above this at the Camden National Bank Plaza.
But isn't there mention of a tip in there? So they mentioned the possibility of. a
They
tip.
did mention that during the last meeting.
Is there any information about what that tip would be used for? Would that tip be used, just to pay for the sidewalk in front of their property? Or would the tip be used to improve sidewalks throughout town?
That would be something, well, okay, so I will say that tips can only be used to improve the area that the tip is located in. So that is a limitation that's already currently existing. But any future tax increment financing districts or anything would need to go through a full town meeting vote. The select board doesn't have the authority to just adopt those on their own. So that would be sort of vetted and negotiated with the select board. And then would have to go to town meeting.
Well, I'm not saying that I want to sit down and vote on this tonight.
We could close the public hearing and
Mhm.
vote on it at the next meeting.
Yeah, I'd like a little more time to review some stuff, but I'm not saying. And we should go through these conditions. We gotta come up with a. Pardon me? Not yet. I'm going to. Okay, do I have a, no, might as well close it, I guess.
I would do a motion and a second to
Yeah,
close it.
I'm gonna do exactly that. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Yep.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay. I think it's within ourselves. I'm thinking we're gonna not move anything further on this tonight. I'll save this for the next meeting.
So we
We
can
have
go
another
through.
meeting in 2 weeks, right, Isabel? Another
It's a special
special one.
though.
That can't include anything else but that one meeting.
It could theoretically, but
Throwing it out there.
Does our next meeting date meet the criteria that we need to stay within?
yes, that would be 2 weeks from now.
No, the next monthly.
Oh,
meeting.
January. So we actually have to discuss that because our typical meeting date would be a holiday. So either we can add, a Tuesday meeting instead of a Monday or something.
When's the first?
It would be January 2nd, which is the town office is closed that day.
Yeah, that's fine.
So we could do like that week up until the 5th.
You guys have all read all these conditions. All right. We can continue this next month, right?
Yes, you can make the decision at your
You
next
want to
meeting.
do that?
Yep.
And you would still need to make findings on the waivers prior to making a decision as well.
Mhm. All right. We do have another, what are we at here? 9 or 10?
We are at 8 to 10 right now.
So we're at-
In
we're at nine? Pardon?
on our,
Nine.
We're
yes,
nine.
we are at 9.
They're gonna give them enough time to make a presentation because they showed up here also.
Well, yeah, this is just.
This is the pre-application concept.
Pre-application.
Should we skip around and set our meeting for the January week? So that,
Sure.
you said they're closed on the 2nd. So
Yes,
it'd have to be the 3rd or 4th or the 5th, right?
yes.
Board meets on the third.
Pardon me?
The select board meets on the third.
So the 4th would probably be the best if that would work for everyone.
You want that in a motion?
Yes, please.
So I'll make a motion that we move our January planning board meeting to January 4th.
Do I have a second? Second. All those in favor? All those opposed? All right. See you on the 4th. You're probably gonna.
Yep.
Yeah. We can't?
Why?
Just select board.
You said the 3rd?
Okay. So we could do the 3rd.
Okay, so I'll remake my motion. Thank you. I'll make the motion that our planning board meeting is held on Tuesday, January 3rd, instead of the 4th.
Back with my second.
Okay, all those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you. All right. We need to change the ordinances in the town of Damascus.
Hmm.
Need to change some of the building size ordinances in the town of Damascus. I'm just saying.
Okay, sounds good.
I think seriously.
Yeah.
Got caught with a pen.
I get that, but you've got playing cards we have to deal with.
Right, dude. Cause this exodus. Might happen, but it might be the last time. All right,
Ledgewood.
Wedgewood.
Yes.
Look at the elevation. Crazy.
Wedgewood?
Yeah, for the new building. It'll be right on us.
So they closed the public hearing, but they continued further review of the application till the 3rd. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
These guys. Housing.
A 2-story building too. Would you like to start?
That'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
All right. Good evening, all. My name is Meg Robinson. I'm a project manager with Developers Collaborative. Developers Collaborative is a Portland-based real estate developer focused on mixed-use developments and affordable market rate and senior housing. I'm joined by my colleague Laura Reading, our Director of Affordable Housing, as well as Steve Bushy of Goral Palmer and Stephen Weatherhead of Winton Scott Architects. So we're here as we've requested a conceptual site plan review for proposed new affordable senior housing development at 207 Ledgewood Court Drive. We're seeking initial feedback from the planning board on our conceptual plans. We propose to expand a previously developed site along Piper Mill Road. The site is 10.5 acres and is zoned rural district. A recent amendment to the land use ordinance regarding net residential density increased the allowable number of units on the entire site to 64. The site also lies within Damascotta's designated village expansion growth area. As we heard earlier, the vision for this village expansion area is to become a residential extension of the village with moderate density housing with a village character, and senior housing is indicated as an allowed use. More broadly, your 2014 comprehensive plan for the town of Damascotta denoted a housing strategy encouraging more diversity of housing choice to enhance the ability for Damascotta seniors and retirees to age in place within the community. We also know that Damascotta has a need for more affordable rental housing. In 2017, which is the most recent data I could find, the renter household median income was $30,605 in Damascotta, whereas the income needed to afford a median 2-bedroom rental unit was $32,824. What this means is that over half of Damascotta renters could not afford rental housing in the town. Maine Housing also recognizes the need for affordable housing for seniors in this area. In the qualified allocation plan for the low-income housing tax credits, Maine Housing allocates additional qualifying points to senior housing projects in Damascotta to incentivize development. Our site was previously developed in 2002, 2003 by Midcoast Maine Community Action. The existing Ledgewood Court development has 24 affordable 2- and 3-bedroom units, apartment units for seniors and families. Our proposed new development is an expansion of the site of the existing development to the southeast. There will be vehicular access to this new development along an extension of the existing drive east. A sidewalk will also connect the sites for pedestrian access. The proposed new development is a 2-story building with 32 apartment units. The units will be age restricted to seniors 55 plus. The entire facility will be 1-bedroom units, 4 of which will be ADA accessible. And all 1-bedrooms will be priced at 60% of the area median income. In 2022, for Lincoln County, 60% of the area median income was equivalent to $33,840 for a 1-person family or $38,640 for a 2-person family. And also in 2022, the associated maximum gross rent for this facility at 60% area median income would be $906 per month. The additional amenities included in the development include a community room and a tenant laundry room. There would also be raised community garden beds for tenants. In addition to additional exterior site improvements, including stormwater management and landscaping, bike racks, and fire lanes. We've provided in our conceptual plan 33 units of parking, which is a little over 1 space per unit. That is the standard for senior housing developments and is also in accordance with your zoning and site plan standards. I'd also like to introduce my colleague, Steve Weatherhead, for further discussion of the building design. Or Steve Bushy for further discussion of the site and building.
I'll be brief. Thank you, Nick. For the record, Steve Bushy, Goro Palmer Consulting Engineers. I'm a civil engineer and we prepared the plans here. Meg gave you some of the background. Here's the existing 24 units built in 2002, 2003 with access off of Piper Mexican Road. Obviously, the discussion just before us was enlightening in a few respects. So we're looking into a number of pieces, but the access piece here on Piper Mill Road, based on the deed that went with this 10.5 acre parcel, includes a deeded access right that goes out to School Street. So it was kind of interesting. There's a few pieces that I want to look into as well as it relates to the deed that goes with this property. But that was established at least in the 2002, 2003 timeframe when this original project here was developed. And Steve can speak to that because he was the architect of record for the 24 units that are there. That's 4 buildings, each with 6 units in it, and it has access with a parking lot and so forth. The proposal here for the new building that Steve will describe in greater detail includes just a single access. This is all a wooded area here. We try to capture a little bit with the green, heavy green coloring, basically a pretty mature forested area. Our clearing limits here will amount to less than 2 acres and probably between 35 to 40,000 square feet of impervious area between the building and the parking lots and so forth. We'll have to work out various details, certainly with the fire department and that sort of thing. I'll note the building will be served by public utilities. We have water and sewer out in Piper Mill Road. And as you, I'm sure, are well aware, the treatment plant here is at the end of the road. Today, the existing development has a small pump station that pumps up through the woods, through a clearing, and then out to the treatment plant, and we'll just be piggybacking on that. This isn't a real big generator of wastewater for certain, as 32 units of senior housing. And it will be interesting to hear from you folks as to maybe some more on the traffic discussion here. And I've worked a lot with Bill in the past, Bill Bray, who did the traffic pieces. So you may want to hear more. Our traffic generation is probably going to be equivalent or less. 32 units of senior housing generates very little traffic in the course of a peak hour discussion, but we've heard lots of commentary about that. So you folks can give us some guidance, hopefully, on that piece of things.
Quick question, the existing pump station sized to handle the expansion?
I got to verify that, but it's a 4-inch force main, which is pretty sizable. I was actually surprised to see there was a force main for a, the 24 units that were out there. So I don't have information yet on the pumps that are in the station. So got a little bit of work to do on that side of things, but kind of feeling like it's probably going to be fine.
4-inch with a 4-inch main, you can put bigger pumps in.
Yeah, exactly.
You shouldn't have any problem with that.
I thought this would be helpful. Didn't know maybe how helpful it was going to be given the previous discussion, just so you get some degree of context here. You obviously were talking about the project across the street. Here's our site within that wooded area, the access lining up opposite the nursing home facility. So that gives you, I guess, some degree of context. We just superimpose that on to the aerial map. Meg mentioned other pieces besides utilities, stormwater management. Interestingly enough, when this development was done here 20 years ago, they did get a DEP permit. The standards were different back then, and it was mostly for flood control. Basically, the water from this site and a little bit of the area just to the south, kind of off into here, all drains to a 24-inch culvert, goes underneath Piper Mill Road on the corner, and then out through the woods. And there's, as far as I know, maybe there's a local name for it, but I haven't seen it.
Kasner Creek.
Okay, that goes out through and goes
Yeah,
to
it's
the
a
north.
really major creek.
Okay.
It's a really important creek. It's a key wildlife area. There's the town forest is right there.
Interestingly enough, the DEP permit that was issued for this project involved basically no improvements for stormwater management. They basically did an analysis and said, yeah, this development here won't impact the 24-inch culvert, and that's how it was approved. That's not what I'm proposing. We're going to be putting in stormwater management measures similar to what these folks talked about here, traditional or new BMPs, best management practices, that will provide both the flood control and water quality treatment for our small area here. So I just wanted to point that out.
But there's not going to be any big reservoir of water, a big pond. There's
No, correct. We're not doing any
Okay.
wet pond of sorts.
All right.
This
No
wouldn't
chain
warrant
link fence around
No,
detention pond.
no.
Okay,
vegetated areas
all right.
to handle stormwater. We did have the lot all surveyed, topography, wetlands by a professional wetlands consultant. So we have all those things marked out. We only have a very minor wetland crossing here, less than 2,000 square feet. So we won't even need a DEP permit for that. Those are the key pieces on the site development side. I'll let Steve talk a little bit about architecture.
2 years of Zoom meetings, I don't have one anymore.
I just have a question. So it's a really mature stand of pines back there, right? So is there any plans to log it, or are you gonna keep it just kind of,
I think keep it generally as is, other than where the development footprint is.
good?
The screen in the world will never see it. You can't see in there. You couldn't see in there. That building will never even show up.
I know.
So I guess my work is done.
Yeah, we don't care what it looks like.
No,
I
it's
have
not.
to say, when I first saw this, I thought, it's a project for old people.
Well,
So convince me otherwise, that this is gonna be a nice building. People are gonna be happy living in it. We want happy people.
Happy people.
I don't want a building that people
Happy
aren't
old
happy in.
people?
Happy old people.
Well, I'll tell you what, got a bedroom.
I was gonna say something, but maybe you guys will be offended, so.
But there's no porch. What about shared, what about, what do I call them? Common spaces, both private and shared.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of places require these kinds of places, public, or
Let's let him-
private.
Let's let him explain, and then we can.
I know,
riddle him
I know.
with questions
I
after.
just was like so surprised.
Yeah, so I think it's,
I know, but does everything have to be in an ordinance?
Yeah.
I mean, this building was basically, they took our ordinance and shook it out and said, "Toom, here it is." It's so.
change
such
the
a-
ordinance.
I know, really.
Yeah, so I mean, that was a lot there. Let me just kind of walk through the building and then I'll try to hit on some of those things. I mean, it is a pretty straightforward building plan, two-story building with 16 units on the 2 floors, with a central entry piece with a community room off to that faces sort of the wooded side. I guess that's north, right? So yes, all the units are pretty efficient, one bedroom units, hovering just about 580 square feet per unit. It's the affordability thing is a big part of it, and making the construction costs work as well in terms of what the rent base is. So anyway, it's a pretty articulated plan with these sort of bump outs along the way. The elevations probably give you the best indication of this. Yeah. So again, a very residential type construction, 2-story wood frame building with clapboard type siding. We're looking at pitched roofs that come in. The ordinance calls for 35-foot height limit on a pitched roof building, and we're 34 and change. It's a 6 and 12 pitch on the roof with hips on the ends, and then these sort of articulated elements that divide the facade up and break the scale down are all gable-ended forms. Sort of a front porch marking the entry facing the parking area, which is to the south. Residential scaled windows 2/2. Right now, we're looking at sort of a 3-color scheme with sort of a dark base that's articulated with a lighter body on the upper levels, and then the sort of a blue color for the smaller units. I will say that, in terms of speaking of architectural variety and such, as part of this overall development, the initial phase was more of a townhouse. See there, so the guy, but if you've, I don't know if you've been up in there, but those are all 2-story townhouse type buildings. So I think, it helps to have that variety, to have different types of buildings on the site to make it feel more sort of incremental in terms of its development, instead of just everything being the same. We don't have outside porches, but the Misha standards do require community amenity spaces. So we do have a community room with a connection. Oh, I didn't. And there should be, we are connecting to the outside out of the community room. And we do have the outside gardens. But yeah, I don't know if that's enough to make people happy or not.
We do have a successful senior living development in town on Hodgson Street. The people there are happy, and they're outside all the time on their porches, looking at the garden, leaning against the fence. Early in the morning, late at night. I mean, it's really amazing. And I think of it as garden apartments, kind of. And I know that people love to live there. I see this as, we don't have anything like this in town. This is a real break from anything we have. Anywhere around. I mean, even in Waldeboro, those apartments, Sprout Block, are they like this? I don't think.
No, yeah.
Okay, maybe they are, and they ruined downtown, may I say, but these are out in the country. But I mean, this is a first for Damascotta. And is it something we really,
We've seen a lot of first tonight.
yeah, I just would really encourage a rethink of the design. And I know you're trying to save money, but I'm really concerned about this project.
So could you be more specific other than porches?
Porches and patios and common areas. And maybe, I know that, we allow this density of units on a single foundation, but maybe, having have it like in a U shape or something, you know what I mean, with a common courtyard or whatever.
Cost more to build it.
We did look at an L-shaped scheme, but it was more problematic in terms of getting the site planning, in terms of the parking and the access connection to the other road. It seemed to take up more land area and was less compact in terms of the development area.
Site topography too was.
And site topography, because it's kind of on a knoll, yeah.
So is it a steep hill or it's a gradual hill?
It's quite gradual in there. You're talking about the access in?
Yeah, when we were looking at a L-shaped building, we had about 12 feet across the building shape, which.
Yeah,
But there's only 4 or 5 feet across the building shape.
How's this layout compared to the existing?
Well, the existing is four 6-unit buildings.
Right.
Right, but
That are
layout, do they
townhouses.
have porches? Do they have common areas, patio areas, things like that?
They have a community room that was also a Main State Housing funded project, so it meets those criteria, which is the community room. I don't believe they have porches. Our firm did it, but it was before my time.
But they're all, you enter into those townhouses from the ground floor.
Correct, right.
You know what I mean? So you don't have,
2-story.
you're not stuck up on the second floor.
You have more.
That's
Yeah.
elevated, right?
I mean,
Yeah.
look at the Salt Bay Apartments on Hodgson Street. Just take a drive.
Are those market rate or?
It's affordable housing. It's Madison runs them, out of Auburn or,
CB Matson.
No
yeah,
idea.
CB Madison.
Well,
There's some on each
fine.
floor, I think, right?
Mhm.
you have laundry facilities in there?
Yeah.
Yeah, laundry on each floor.
As soon as you go to the main entry to the left, yeah.
Mhm.
Have both of them? All right.
So 32, that means one facility for.
And your water surface is big enough to sprinkle that building?
Yes. The original part of the development was not sprinkled. But we've had an upgrade in the water system since then. And it was a nightmare that we chose not to sprinkle the building because of just all the fire code requirements for party walls and ratings and keeping it all separated. So that was a real challenge. So that was one of the first things we want to confirm for the second phase, but yes, we will be fully sprinkled for this one.
So coastal economic development,
That was the
the original owners,
Yeah,
and they sold it to Mid-Coast Maine Community Action. I'm confused as to who is actually developing this. Who owns Ledgewood?
So, Mid-Coast Maine Community Action partnered with the current owner. DC Lakewood LLC is listed as a co-applicant because they have a purchase and sale agreement to purchase the property. And they are also currently the asset managers for the property, so they're controlling the existing property.
So they would buy it once this project is approved?
Yeah, and it would actually ultimately, a limited partnership would be the owner of the property, as part of the. An investor comes in, as 99% of that entity. But, the dealer would be the general partner who operates and manages the development.
So right now, it seems to be really well run. You know, I mean, I've been around to a bunch of these, you know, housing projects, and Ledgewood kind of stands out as a really well-run facility. Are you saying that that's all going to change once
No,
if this-
it wouldn't change, and CNC Realty Management.
CNC would keep on
manage the
managing it?
development.
Okay. Well, we have to have a site visit, right?
You have that all flagged out. We're gonna do that.
Can have that done within a week. My only cautionary, if we could have a sidewalk, let's do it before the snow flies. Which I
That'd be
think we
nice.
still got a couple weeks, but.
Yeah, that would be convenient. I wouldn't mind walking down in there and taking a look. Oh, I have walked through there before. You guys want to do that?
Sooner than later, it'd be better if they do it before snow flies, if
I
it
don't-
does.
I don't know what everyone's work schedule is like, but it might make sense to do it before our special meeting on the 19th.
That's fine. I'd love to if you can get it flagged out.
Like at 4:30.
Yeah.
It's gonna be-
No,
Oh,
pretty
that's too
dark.
dark.
Yeah.
Isabel, it gets pretty dark, but
Never mind.
How about 3?
Yeah.
I can split out at
Okay.
3.
Can I ask, what are the noticing requirements, if any, for your site walk? Just because I want to make sure that it's flagged out and staked before the notices happen. So if there is a notice requirement or not, you set the date.
There's a
today,
2-week
is what it
notice
is.
requirement, a 2-week notice requirement.
Can we get that before the 19th? You want to do it on the 19th?
Oh, if there's a 2-week notice requirement in the paper, we won't be able to hit the paper for the 19th.
Is that true? Is it 2 weeks? For a site visit?
Let me look it up. If there's any
Does it
other
have to be in the
comments.
paper for 2 weeks or just 2 weeks from when we decide to do it?
I thought that it only had to be posted in on the town's website and in the town office.
Oh, maybe.
But I just want to
think that's
verify
true.
that.
Okay, I think
don't it
actually
has
that's
to be in
true.
the paper for 2 weeks. I think it'd have to be posted.
Yeah.
That being said, I think we can make the 19th, can't we?
If,
That's right now.
yes, if that's the case, we'll be able to make the
It'd be
19th.
just the 19th, though.
Yep.
If I can get building corners staked, wood staked, and then maybe some flagging around the theoretical clearing limits, is that?
Yeah, parking lot area. Some stuff and some trees, measure it out. Do what you can. You guys go to the 19th.
Is there an elevator in
time?
this?
Jonathan,
Huh?
what time? 3?
19th, around 3 o'clock.
Okay. And what is that white part up there, right there?
So, yeah, so that's, if you look at the roof plan, that's because these multi-unit buildings these days tend to have heat pumps. I don't know if you've seen those around
Yeah.
towns. But as projects get bigger, you start to see a whole sea of them, so we've tucked them in. Sort of into this pocket here. So this is essentially a roof space with a parapet wall, so it would hide the units.
Just to keep them out of sight. That's a good idea.
So there's no apartments above the community room, then it's just sort of a divot in the roof.
That's right. So
Okay.
it would be, I mean, this is actually quite a large lobby right now for the elevator lobby. It's about probably 16 by 18. So I mean, we might be able to gesture that out and try to make, more of a communal space there for kind of congregating and such on the second floor.
I think it's really important to have connection to the outside world, and I don't see it in this design at all. And I'm really concerned about that. I'm really concerned about the lack of porches, of balconies, of patios. Well, I just think especially because this is, older people. It's just kind of depressing. Here you are in the dark woods. Stuck. Warehoused. So, I mean, I want everyone to be happy who lives here.
Not sure you can make them do that.
I want Damascus to be filled with happy people.
I would too, but the reality is, there's one thing about it, if somebody really didn't like it there, they ain't gonna live there.
Just put it, the fiscal challenges are significant.
I know, I understand that,
At
and that's.
affordable level,
Yeah.
is remarkably difficult to manage.
TV.
I mean, every door is $1,000.
Who are
And you cut it in there.
very appreciative of this space. The community rooms actually do get used pretty well. They have events, weekly meetings, they play games in there. Garden beds are always well appreciated, so we include them. These are spaces that people appreciate having in many of our buildings.
Can I flag a quick question? Sorry, I know this isn't about what I want to see, but I did want to just flag, it might be helpful in your application to understand what like the affordable housing wait list or the affordable housing situation is here. That's not a specific requirement of the ordinance, but I think that might be helpful in your cover letter to understand, is there a wait list here in Damascus or in Lincoln County and
The Section 8?
Yep. So like Section 8 housing or
It's on the web. Of course we have it. I mean, that's an easily found number.
yep. So I would encourage that and any other sort of information that you can provide about the context of this project specific to Damascus.
It's predominantly elder housing now.
Over 55. I mean,
Yes.
55 isn't necessarily elder.
Well,
Especially when you get over 55.
I feel pretty elder most of the time.
Oh, that's funny, Jenny, because a little while ago, everybody had to be old to be in there, so.
Yeah, right. More years I could be living there.
Did you say they were all one bedroom?
Correct.
Yeah.
Nobody did the count.
Well,
Just to pull out.
Procedurally, we know we have to go through site plan process here and site walk and then our submission and so forth. We also have the DEP for the stormwater, since there's already a standing stormwater permit for the property. We're gonna have to amend that, but that's fine. This is intended on being submitted to Main State Housing in the next September 2023 round.
Yeah, we actually already submitted it as a part of a walk-in program, but it seems like the funding may not be available for that. So we may, hopefully there'll be another funding round that opens up, in which case we submit it again. May be fall of next year.
And building is hinged off getting that approval.
so are these,
Construction would be at least a year away, any sort of construction start, just so you have some context of this project compared to, I know you're dealing with a larger project across the street, so.
there's all kinds of affordable housing. And some is dependent on getting on the Section 8 wait list. And some is just based on your income. What kind is this?
This would be funded through the Lincoln Housing Tax Credit Program, which essentially provides the subsidy upfront in the development, and then the rental, monthly rent is capped based on the 60% of the area median income, which changes from year to year.
Okay, so it's income based.
Yeah.
So it's not really Section 8.
Section 8 vouchers are accepted, but it's not funded. through
Yeah,
that program.
okay.
Anything else?
And there's 2 ADA units,
For
4,
2 per floor,
okay.
which are, yeah, slightly larger units, larger bathrooms,
Mhm.
larger kitchen. Just to meet clearances.
And I guess to Isabel's point of the potential interest or clients in the area. If you don't meet that, is the 55 and above hard and set? So if you don't have a chance to fill that, you're not going to open it up to younger folks. Okay.
Never had an issue filling buildings.
Yeah, I'm sure you haven't.
Have you built a building like this
Um,
nearby that we can look at, or?
Yeah,
Or-
not exactly to this building, but I mean, we've completed. We're completing 39 units down in Scarborough right now. It's a 3-story pitched roof. We completed 25 in Belfast, which is a slightly smaller, but similar building. We recently completed 29 up in Ellsworth, which is pretty similar to this building as well.
Mhm.
Just quite a few.
With the same model of no balcony, no garden.
Just correct.
Like this.
Yeah. And it all comes down to construction costs.
They do have a beautiful library in town that we designed that has a great courtyard.
You know what? I kept saying to everyone, Winton Scott, they designed our beautiful library. How could they present this? And I thought, I even went on your website and looked to say, am I remembering wrong? Because I
Yeah.
kept, I know, I kept
Project had a
thinking,
benefactor that did.
you guys did a great job on that. And every day I go by that library, I say, wow, Winton Scott, they designed this. They did a great job,
Thank you.
you know?
That library almost got me killed. My uncle was the head of Save Our Streets and the Dixon House was saved.
Yeah.
I was the guy that made a motion to accept the library. Well, they saved one building. He's long gone now. Love him, but yeah, that wasn't fun.
No, it was.
It was
You
rough.
remember
It was a
that,
rough
don't
time,
you?
a rough time.
Indeed.
Okay, but anyways, I just want to say that it did not slip by me that Winton Scott was the architects. I was really impressed. I was excited. So are you going to use beautiful materials inside? I want beauty.
You live in there?
Right.
Maybe I'll end up there. Who knows? Oh, well,
Fun paint colors,
We
perhaps.
do bring in local Maine artists to provide art throughout the.
Okay.
That is first thing.
That's a good
first.
idea.
You know, I agree, simple doesn't have to be ugly. I think there are ways of creating nice spaces economically.
I know you're talking about the billing, but I have to keep coming back to the stuff that interests me. So the traffic piece, if we can for a moment, talk about what more besides what you've already heard. Piggyback a little bit on what Mr. Bray's already kind of given you for a project that's basically on the same road in the same area. I can offer the information that we'll be submitting will be very similar in nature of, all right, trip generation based on this use. Got that. Bill's kind of already covered what there is for accident history and some of the intersections, so and so forth. I heard a little bit of discussion about sidewalks. That's certainly something that I suppose is in your purview as to how you view what this project might be obligated to do or not do, or what have you. I could just offer here up front without having the benefit of a traffic engineer, and I'm not going to pretend I'm a traffic engineer, but I've been doing this for 35 years. This senior housing is not going to generate a lot of traffic from my perspective, based on the numbers and the volumes. This is just senior housing. It's a couple of trips every 10 minutes. The car comes in, might leave 10 minutes later, sort of thing. There's just not much traffic. How this site though relates to the downtown, because I thought I heard a fair amount of discussion about that piece. So that's an interesting point. I don't have a good feel. It sounded to me like the ability to walk from either the project across the street or our project down across School Street, down High Street, then I don't know if there's a sidewalk or not on Bristol.
Bristol Road there is.
Yeah.
Brand new, yeah.
So it's not a long distance, but that's a matter of interpretation and what people feel, what's a distance to walk or not. And customarily, if you're within 10 minutes, 15 minutes of walking someplace, do it all the time. And this site doesn't seem like it's much more than 15 minutes to get downtown. And gosh, that's pretty comfortable.
So right now, there's no sidewalk along the driveway.
Yeah, Piper Mill Road.
Down the driveway to Piper Mill Road. Well, I mean, when I've gone there, I've seen kids, just in the driveway using their skateboards or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
There's sidewalks out in front of the units,
Right.
but you're right that there wasn't anything.
I think there needs to be. And I think there needs to be a sidewalk down, a connecting sidewalk down to Piper Mill Road.
Out here.
Probably does.
Yeah.
Same criteria.
And I
as
think the
other
traffic study should include not just the new site, but combined with the existing numbers. So that, was it 24 you said?
Right.
Granted, it's still not going to be as much, I don't think, but I think
Right.
for purposes of that, I think we should talk as a whole.
Connectivity, there needs to be.
You have a bus pulling into the other one, the school bus and the other.
Right, right.
Yeah. You'll carry one of the room service. Flying over there, too.
Well, I don't have any questions till next time.
Right.
Yep, I think we're all set for the third year.
We'll see you on the 19th.
On those gray little pop outs there,
Blue,
blue, yeah. Balconies. You know what I mean? And those windows could be like just little doors. Because aren't those two living rooms right there?
They are, yes, those are.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are. the living-
Oh, yeah. Connecting, you mean? Nice. It seems high, the whole building, but I guess,
Yeah, the floors are 9'8". So yeah, you could condense that a little bit.
The total
It's
height
gonna
of the
give you like
building?
8'6" to 8'7" ceilings instead of 8-foot ceilings, which is a, standard house.
oh, so these are higher ceilings? That's better.
That makes higher ceilings
Makes happy people. That's what the Victorians, in the Victorian age, that's what they believe. Yeah.
That's where they compromise, Danny, no.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Well, at least.
Might be inside, but you feel like.
Right? Jump around inside all you want.
Jenny, you gotta skip out of here tonight.
I've had a long day.
You do?
I did today.
I think we like the mood.
What have you got? I want some.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Before I let you guys go, I just had a couple things to plug.
Good.
Okay, thank you very much.
We do have, well, I should say, we do have a agenda item for questions from the public, which is an opportunity for the public to ask questions on items not on the agenda. Doesn't seem like Jeff is interested in speaking unless.
There isn't anybody here, so.
I just wanted to plug that in case. So I spoke with Wilder today and then Anne is out because she's sick. We have not adopted a remote meeting policy for you all to meet virtually or participate virtually. Officially. And in order to do so, we do need to actually officially adopt one for the board members to participate virtually. Is this something that you are interested in adopting, or are you sort of okay with requiring people to be here in person?
Does the Board of Selectmen have one?
Not at this point. They have discussed it in the past, but they don't have.
prefer just to be, it's so much easier to just be here.
Okay.
I mean, it's just way easier than
And I think if we were going to do that, I would be in favor if it was like Ann's case. But not just because I don't feel like driving in tonight to join it that way.
Like
I
in
think we gotta-
emergency
correct,
situations.
Correct. If we do, that would be my take on it, is it has to be a decent reason other than, or if you're out of town, you know. I mean, I'm sure there's some,
That's why we have alternates.
I get that, but.
Okay.
But yeah,
So-
Well, one point, I remember going back to that library project, we had a public meeting, but I was too sick to attend. And I was, trouble. So I did, and then we had the next meeting. I started to say something, so one side said, I object to speaking. And didn't go to the public meeting. And then the other side stood up, and said, we also object. Holy Christ, nobody wants me here. I mean, that's true.
Yeah.
So I don't know if Ann comes to the next meeting, can she in fact participate?
What I would say is it is probably best practice if she did not participate, since she wasn't here to hear the deliberations this
I
evening.
mean, she can't take over for me then.
No, you're stuck.
The planning board could ask the applicants and,
It's gonna neighbors, are
members of the
gonna-
public, I
neighbors are
guess,
gonna shoot.
if
me.
they
What?
have a desire
Done.
to, if they're okay with her speaking, but I would say it's probably best practice if she didn't participate.
Well, I mean, those were the two lawyers and I assume they,
We also have one person abstaining, so.
Yep,
That's a
but
good
that's still
argument
a
for actually having
four-person
that.
forum.
Correct. Yeah, that's what I'm saying is,
All right, I can get you, I get it, Neil.
and I did witness a selectmen's meeting a few years ago.
I didn't think about
Where
that.
one of the members was on vacation and participated.
right.
So again,
And so I think there was a policy that we used to have around that. So maybe we can look at that and maybe present it at our next one and see if we want to tweak it. But I think it's a good idea to have it for those reasons.
Okay.
So that if we run into a situation where two of us aren't here next meet, that Ann would be able to step in if she participated in that meeting through that content.
Okay.
So,
I'll draft something up for you all to
Okay,
take a look at.
So she didn't Zoom? I thought she was gonna Zoom.
I actually told her that she wasn't allowed to Zoom because we don't have a remote meeting policy. The COVID pandemic kind of adjusted things. Now there's specific state legislation, state statute about this, that board members can't participate remotely without a remote meeting policy in place.
Well, then we
So,
have to have a remote meeting policy.
right, I think we do because if not, we're gonna get into a mess over it. So I think
Okay, so let's have one.
all right.
and then I did want to plug that we have a couple of vacancies on the comprehensive plan committee for updating the 2014 comprehensive plan with intended adoption in 2024. If you or anyone that you know is interested,
Those
please have them,
people that spoke.
please have them reach out to me.
Did you get their names?
I have their
Is it
email.
Jennifer or something?
Yeah.
not the comprehensive plan one,
I don't remember it.
not that I know of.
I don't think
Maybe they
we
do.
have.
Get
but
ready to
that
do
doesn't
that.
mean we
Certainly like
can't.
to see some changes made.
Make a list of those changes.
And at 8:58, 2 minutes to spare. That's all I have.
I make a list of-
Do we have any information on the meeting on the 19th? Then hurry up, we gotta do this before the end of the month.
So yes, so it is an application for a existing medical marijuana establishment. She is relocating businesses because her lease is
To
ending.
where?
To the corner of Heater Road and Bisbee. It's 95 Bisbee, I think. It's a existing kind of crappy
House?
house.
Yeah,
House of Ray.
Village. Cole.
Yep.
Yeah, it's very cool.
So she,
Is it that crappy thing in the woods? Right?
She's
she is,
still on.
It's a
Yeah.
perfect place for posh, yeah.
so
It is. a crappy-
So she's intending to renovate it and add some new windows and do some additional things. I'll let her application speak to that, but that will be the
Perfect.
one thing that we have on the agenda.
Perfect.
All right, cool.
All right, I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
okay.
All those in favor? All those opposed? I gotta
This meeting
tell
has
you,
ended.
that one.